For the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. And while Bill and Whit are on air for the Coaches Show, the release of the college football playoff rankings will actually happen in real time. Maybe. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we actually have Utah men's basketball against Purdue Fort Wayne. So Porter's reminding me that there is a chance that they will not be on air when the college football playoff rankings are released. However,
we'll give you an update in the 6 o'clock hour.
Okay.
I'll guarantee you that because I'll be on air in the kind of intermediary.
Oh, nice. Okay, so Porter's producing tonight, so we'll let you know as soon as they come out because I know how many people want to hear that live. And that's what Tuesdays during the college football season are all about, the release of the CFP rankings, the only rankings that matter now. None of the other rankings matter at this point. AP coaches poll never really matters. So we're going to get into it today. The scenarios for BYU, the scenarios for Utah, the scenarios for the Big 12. And we'll talk about some games coming up. Unfortunately, this week is the SEC rite of passage where we don't have to play anybody at all. So there are a few games of consequence, namely Oregon, USC. And for Ute fans, I'm sorry to tell you this, you got to cheer for USC coming up this weekend to handle their business against Oregon. Oregon losing could actually pave a pathway. Notre Dame's not going to lose again, at least I don't think. A couple of other teams ahead of both Utah and BYU with some challenges left. But again, this is your annual SEC, like Texas A&M is playing Samford. Oklahoma has a little bit of a sneaky game at home in Norman against Missouri, but Missouri is still without their starting quarterback. So we'll go over some of these matchups. Georgia is playing Charlotte. This is such an unserious exercise. This week, every year, actually pisses me off. Alabama's playing Eastern Illinois. This should not be allowed, like at all. So Notre Dame has Syracuse coming up this Saturday. Syracuse is 3-7, not a good team. The Texas loss, the Texas wild card tonight is going to be interesting. How far do they fall after getting beat pretty good between the hedges? Will they even slide them past Vandy at 14? We'll have to kind of see in that direction. So we'll go over some of these matchups and kind of talk about what you need to cheer for if you're a Utah fan, if you're a BYU fan, to try to get, because unfortunately, the most likely scenario is neither BYU or Utah get in. That's the most likely scenario as of now. There's a sneaky game coming up next week where Mississippi State will host Ole Miss. And I was talking to Sean about this during Crosstalk. Lane Kiffin is clearly entertaining offers from LSU and Florida, so much so that his ex-wife and their 3 kids are taking trips to Baton Rouge and to Florida to kind of take a tour to see where they would prefer to live. It's kind of an interesting family dynamic. Oklahoma does host LSU in Norman, so another challenge for them. And then the only other game that Bama has a chance to lose, and Auburn's not very good, but the Iron Bowl gets really weird. That will be Bama's final game of the season. And then Notre Dame, unfortunately, some years would face a challenge at Stanford Stadium in Stanford, California, but not this year. As BYU fans know, Stanford's not a good team. So that's kind of the big deal today. We'll get you ready for the CFP rankings release, and then we'll talk about both BYU and Utah, the games that are in the books. Kind of on Tuesday, we continue to exist in the space where we analyze before we really turn the page and look ahead coming up tomorrow as both Utah and BYU. Very impressive, both teams over the weekend. Just a shellacking of Texas Christian from Brigham Young and a boat race of Baylor from the Utah Utes. Utah State still looking to get bowl eligible. It's going to be tough, though. They've got Fresno and Boise State. It's a tough loss against Vegas where they missed 3 field goals. So a lot of college football on the show today. Your weekend in the NFL ended last night with a win from the Dallas Cowboys over the Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are not very good this year, and Dallas on offense looked pretty solid. Interesting choice by Schottenheimer to start things off. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens on the sideline for the first possession. And then as soon as they got a chance to play, they both were awesome. Dak looked pretty good last night. So the NFL offer a couple of nights before Thursday Night Football between the Bills and the Texans at NRG Stadium. getting closer and closer to playoff time. Maybe in your fantasy football leagues, it's week 12 of the NFL. Utah Mammoth are on a slide. They're going to try to get off the snide tonight against San Jose. They lost in overtime last night. Spicy Tuna back on the ice. And what did he decide to do? Pick a fight with Ross Johnson, who's about twice his size, and poor Liam O'Brien got his head kicked in. But the Mammoth have now lost 7 of 9, going in the wrong direction. Utah Jazz are back in action tonight, taking on the LA Lakers. LeBron James has not played this year, but he has been practicing. I don't know if he'll be available tonight, but we'll get to some Jazz stuff. The first Jeremy Woo mock draft of the year has come out. If you're a Jazz fan, you need to pay attention to some of these prospects. We'll get into some of that stuff on the show today. We will be on location coming up on Thursday for a very special announcement for Real Salt Lake, and that's all I can say. But you're going to be excited about it. So it is the off season in soccer. Not really going to talk much about that today. We'll kind of lean into that on Thursday. Our first guest today, right out of the gates, Chris Kamrani. CK stops by, our college football expert from The Athletic. We'll bring in Craig Bolerjack. The triumphant return of Band McMahon, guys. NBA Daily Assist style. Tim McMahon joins us, and then Dave Fox will be live in studio. I'll be on TV with Dave tonight. On at 10:35 on KMYU. We're doing Talkin' Jazz. After I was in studio with Adam Mikulich on Sunday night doing Talkin' Hockey. 30 minutes of Utah Mammoth conversation. Chris Kamrani, Craig Bolerjack, Tim McMahon, Dave Fox, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners. That young man in there, Porter Larson. Could you fill a 30-minute show about the Utah Mammoth in the NHL?
No.
Do a little Talkin' hockey? Yeah.
No. Listen. I am admittedly still very much like learning about hockey. My depth of hockey knowledge before the Utah Mammoth came to Salt Lake was like the EA Sports video game because it was really fun.
It was fun.
Now, if you are intuitive enough and you watch sports, I think with like some sort of intent, there is a lot of patterns that you can see in hockey that resemble I would say basketball a lot, as well as, of course, some soccer, lacrosse, the obvious ones. So, I'm learning the sport. I know the rules by now, but no, I couldn't earnestly give you 30 minutes, but I could filibuster for 30 minutes about hockey if you needed me to.
Certainly a skill that you gain when it comes to doing this job is the ability just to fill time without saying anything at all. And honestly, the best play-by-play guys in the world, it's exactly what they do.
Baseball, for sure.
Well, I mean, ultimately, all due respect to some of the play-by-play guys around here, like if you wanted to get into a nuts and bolts, let's talk schematics, let's talk tactics, conversation with play-by-play guys, you're not going to do it. But they're masters at filling time without saying anything at all.
That's the game.
It is the
words. Wordsmiths. Linguists. No, that's not They have great lexicons.
Okay, that works as well.
I don't know what I'm.
No, that works as well. Speaking of filibuster, Chris Kamrani live in studio. Our guy stops by right out of the gates, but on a Tuesday afternoon before CK rolls in, courtesy of our good friends, your good friends too at Prize Picks. It's time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of The Drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
You guys already know that Prize Picks is the best place to win cash on football, whether it is the Cowboys, the Niners, the Broncos, the Raiders. Basketball is back, though, and Prize Picks is also the best place to win cash on the Jazz or the Lakers or the Knicks or the Warriors, whoever your favorite team is. Prize Picks now offers stacks. So tonight for Jazz Lakers, you can pick more or less on Lauri Markkanen's 3 points, 3-point attempts, assists, rebounds. You can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on Prize Picks. Follow other Prize Picks players directly on the app. Copy their lineups in one click, whether it's a friend, a celebrity partner, or just someone whose picks you like. Hit that follow button and check out every lineup they create in the new feed tab on Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups. After you play your first $5 lineup, promo code ESPN700 to get $50 in lineups. After you play your first $5 lineup on Prize Picks, it is good to be right. So, Porter, we went over my 16 parlay last night on Prize Picks. I was an Ashton Genty touchdown away from hitting. I went 5 of 6.
That's tough.
Ferguson caught a touchdown.
He did.
CD caught a touchdown. Dak went over. Geno went over. I just needed an Ashton Genty touchdown.
And that's tough. When you get within that close of the old parlay legs, that's a hard loss. But when it's scoring, when it's 3 different guys to score in one game, getting 2 out of 3 is actually that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I was right there, but it also fools you into believing that you're so close. That's how they keep you coming back. Like, the lottery system is rigged for you to, like, if there are 13 numbers you have to hit, 10,000 people are going to hit 11. Be like,
right.
Oh, I'm only 2 numbers away. I need to drive back up to Idaho tonight.
It's part of the game.
That's how they get you.
I need to get on the house side. I need to figure out.
Yeah, indeed. That's where you want to be.
Who to introduce myself over there.
All right, tonight at about 6:30 Mountain Time, the 3rd iteration of the college football playoff rankings will be released. It's been a little inconsistent as far as the time slots go when it comes to the way ESPN has handled this. Week 1, it was 5 o'clock Mountain Time, so it was right when we launched into the 5 o'clock hour of the show. Week 1, it was 6 o'clock Mountain Time. It was week 2 that it actually came down at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, so we were on air. Tonight, they are asking you to watch their college basketball doubleheader. So at 4:30 Mountain Time, Michigan State and Kentucky will tip off from Madison Square Garden. And then Kansas at Duke. Now, I think the Peterson kid is hurt, so tonight was supposed to be like Darren Peterson against Cam Boozer, 2 of the top 3 prospects, along with A.J. DeBonce in the entire college basketball ecosystem. But I think the Peterson kid is hurt with a hamstring. Anyway, we're not here to break down Duke, Kansas on the show today. At halftime, between the 2 games. So after Michigan State, Kentucky ends, and before Kansas and Duke begins, you will get the 3rd iteration of the college football playoff rankings released, okay? So keep that in mind because a lot of people, a little bit confused as far as when this is going to go down. So let's discuss this a little bit. I don't know that we're going to see a ton of movement. The Texas loss does affect things. These are the projected top 12, and I don't think there are going to be any surprises tonight. I would be a little bit stunned. I honestly think this is how it's going to go. Number 1 is going to continue to be Ohio State. Number 2 is Indiana. They stayed clean. I wonder if the committee looks at A&M a little bit differently after nearly getting got by South Carolina when they were down 30-3. But that comeback, it was one for the ages. I got to believe A&M stays at 3. Georgia, right now, might be the best team in college football, not named Ohio State, and maybe even a team that can match up with them. Kirby Smart said himself over the weekend they're playing their best football of the year right now, and that's what you want to be doing in November. So Georgia at 4. I think we're going to see Texas Tech at 5. Texas Tech should be knocking on the door for a first-round bye out of the Big 12. And look, it's just time to say, and has been time to say for a few weeks, in the Big 12 Conference, it is Texas Tech, and it's everybody else. If you want to expand that a little bit, it's clearly Texas Tech, BYU, and Utah, and then there's a large gap between 3 and whoever you think is at 4. I think at one point maybe it was Cincinnati. I don't know that I ever thought it was Houston. Maybe it's Arizona State, even though they're without Sam Levitt. And by the way, a report that Sam Levitt may be transferring and not coming back to play for Kenny Dillingham next year. Oregon should be at 7, okay? So, the win over Minnesota is not going to do much, but they only have 1 loss, and obviously it was to Indiana. They've got SC coming up, and I know you don't love to hear this, Utah fans. You got to buy some SC gear. You got to put on your USC hat because that's what you need to have happen. You got to have some of these teams lose, of course, in front of you in order to move up. There's your scientific analysis of the CFP rankings. So I think it's going to be Oregon at 7. I guess it'll be Oklahoma at 8. You could probably make an argument that maybe, they ultimately climb a little bit higher after going down to Tuscaloosa and getting that win. But Alabama probably is going to be at 9. That would be my guess, unless they decide to move Notre Dame up to 9. But my guess is Bama's going to be at 9. Notre Dame will be at 10. And then I think we see BYU at 11. That's my guess. After trouncing TCU. And then Utah should come in at 12. That's my best guess. That ultimately is what the projections look like. I would be stunned if we see anything different. There are other metrics that we continue to talk about that favor Utah over some of the other teams in the Big 12, namely BYU. BYU has a very excellent strength of record, better than Notre Dame's. You can get into the weeds with some of the stuff as far as what the debate sounds like and what exactly the committee is looking for, but sometimes that's a little bit arbitrary. It is a very odd sport in a lot of ways. I mean, it's a sport that we all love to consume and talk about and cover, but it's also a sport, as Ute fans know, where there are years you can win every game on your schedule and you don't have a chance to hang a banner. It's a weird dynamic. Things like head-to-head have to continue to matter. They're going to look at Football Power Index. They're going to look at S&P Plus. They're going to look at strength of record. They're going to look at strength of schedule. They're going to look at best wins and quote-unquote good losses. And if you're a Ute fan, the unfortunate truth is there's not a great win on this resume. There just isn't. Even before Cincinnati lost to Arizona, how good of a win was that? It was fine. I mean, the margin of victory was insane. They smoked them. But you don't really have anything to hang your hat on outside of when you have played lesser competition. They haven't even looked like they belong on the field with you. I mean, you can get into the mental gymnastics of Utah beating Arizona State, and Arizona State beat Texas Tech, but Utah beat Arizona State without Sam Levitt, and Arizona State beat Texas Tech without the Baron Morton kid. So it's complex, but I don't know that we're going to see a ton of movement tonight. And ultimately, you have to look at some of these games coming up, as we talked about earlier. And if you're a Ute fan, if you're a BYU fan, you've got to hope that maybe Missouri goes down to Norman and upsets Oklahoma. Maybe USC heads to Autzen and upsets Oregon. I don't think Notre Dame's in any danger of losing to Syracuse. I mean, it's a crazy sport where upsets happen every single weekend. But when you look at the path ahead, unfortunately, the most likely scenario is that neither Utah or BYU are going to be in the college football playoff. Obviously, the outlier is if one of them is able to get into the Big 12 championship game and upset Texas Tech. That, of course, is a big if. All right, we'll catch a break. Chris Camerani is going to join us, and he's going to unpack every single angle of every single tiebreaker in every single conference. Coming up on the other side of a Tuesday Drive right here on ESPN 700. I think maybe
they're towing the line though.
Yeah.
I think they're hitting Gen X, Millennial, Gen Z pretty well.
Yeah, I
with this
think
lineup.
I recognize 5 or 6 acts as opposed to
The
last year.
The headliners. Well, let's see.
Japanese Breakfast, I'm familiar with. The XX, I really, really like.
Lord.
Lord.
Lucy Dacus.
Lucy Dacus.
Father John Misty.
Father John
Come on,
Misty.
dude.
Oh no! Don't you do that! Don't you pigeon me hole into that! Don't pigeonhole me into that box. Even though it feels so right.
Turnstile's good.
I've seen Father John Misty more times than I want to admit.
Clap Your Hands, Say Yeah.
I have heard of them.
Ben
Yeah.
Queller, you've heard
Yep,
of.
Ben Queller,
He's a
excellent
throwback.
artist. Okay,
but yeah,
last year I think it was.
I can't remember. Last year was Slim Pickens for me too.
I'm trying to think who I made sure I saw Weezer.
Oh, and you went.
I did. I went
and
to
it was
Weezer.
at
the Fair Park.
Yeah.
How was fun. It was awesome.
the setup?
It was great.
Okay.
Had a good time. Chris Camerani,
What's
live
up,
in studio. How are you, man?
I'm great. How are you?
How's the boy? Did you survive the weekend?
Yeah, we got up on an 8-foot ladder and did yard work.
Yeah, you did.
I was told by a 3-year-old to go away while he stood 8 feet up in the air.
Get used to it, buddy.
With pruning shears, by the way.
Oh, my gosh.
I wasn't joking when I said DCFS was going to come for me.
Did you send Amanda that picture of him on the ladder, or would you not
I did
dare? Okay, smart. Hopefully she's not listening. My guess is she's not.
Probably not. Let's hope not.
All right, CK. College football playoff rankings will be released tonight. Fact of the matter is, the most likely scenario is neither Utah or BYU get into the CFP. That's where we're at right now. There's plenty of football left to be played, but does it feel like we're kind of inching closer and closer to another scenario where the Big 12 just gets its league champion?
Well, the only hope is for multiple, I think at this point, is for BYU to win out, get to Arlington, and beat Texas Tech, because then the committee would not leave out Texas Tech. And then they would have to guarantee BYU a spot.
Yep.
I don't know if anything is possible. Granted, that game will be played in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, at Jerry World, right?
Arlington, yes, that is correct.
So it would be a de facto secondary home game for Texas Tech, although not in Lubbock. But yes, I think if BYU can't beat Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game, then you're going to have the Big 12 be a one-bid league.
So when it comes to the conversation, and we've kind of alluded to this before, I just continue to hear it when it comes to, and look, everyone wants to keep their job. So people that cover the Big 12, it's their job to be shills for the conference. People that
really
have like Big 12-centric
do people know this
podcasts or whatever. But, and look, I try to listen to a bunch of different perspectives and read a lot of different angles so I'm not colored through one different lens. But that does include some Big 12 specific shows or articles and such. And I'll just present the argument they present, and then I just want you to kind of take it from there. Like when you look at Notre Dame with 2 losses, when you look at, potential Oklahoma with 2 losses and BYU only with 1 and Utah with 2, why aren't BYU and Utah considered on the same playing field as some of their cohorts in other conferences with either more losses or the same losses?
Are we talking about a theoretical scenario where Oklahoma wins out? Oklahoma had one of, okay, so in that, if we're going to use Oklahoma versus Utah and BYU for a second, had, I think, one of the toughest schedules in the country, just beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. I think as a 2-loss team would absolutely have a better resume than Utah. You get into mucky waters a little bit when you start talking about a potentially 11-1 BYU team versus a 10-2 Oklahoma team. But listen, man, you're swimming upstream. You're going to the benefit of the doubt will go to the team that has those types of landmark wins. What is BYU's best win this year?
Utah.
And what is Utah's best win this year?
It's Cincinnati that doesn't look good. Like I talked about this to start the show. I mean, look, we could also bring Bama into play because Bama lost to Florida State to start the season, and Florida State stinks. And then they just lost to Oklahoma at home. I think
they beat Georgia.
But I think you know where I stand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just presenting this hypothetical that I keep hearing when it comes to why isn't the Big 12 given the same respect of the SEC and the Big 10?
Because they don't have the same resumes. They just don't. They don't have the same amount of quality wins. I think Texas Tech is the outlier because they've beaten the best teams in their conference handily, one on the road, one at home. They passed the eyeball test. I don't know if the committee still believes in Utah or BYU. Now I know the stats, the FPS, S&P 500, all of those guys. They love Utah.
We're not the S&P 500,
Okay.
but let's talk about your portfolio later. We'll get to the S&P Plus and the FPI, but you're right. The advanced metrics continue to tell us they like Utah a lot.
My point is you have to have some sort of landmark win on your resume to impress the committee beyond the S&P 500, and neither of these teams have those. They just don't.
Do you own any index funds?
I couldn't listen, man. I can barely log in to check my own benefits, let alone S&P 500.
Fair enough.
Stuff.
No, look, you're not wrong. I mean, it's just interesting to have this. Like, if Utah played Notre Dame on Saturday, and it's a neutral
Notre Dame's
field,
going to win.
Who do you think's favored? Who's Vegas favorite?
Notre Dame.
Like, easily?
Easily.
Huh.
I'd say 6.5, 7 minimum.
So Notre Dame's best win this year is either USC at home or on the road last week at Pitt,
which is looking better and better each week.
Well, and again, to go back to the issue when it comes to the way we're analyzing Utah, it's simply this. When they have played teams of lesser competition, they have stomped them.
Mm-hmm.
The two teams that the CFP committee tells us they like beat Utah.
Yep.
And there's not even a top 25 win because Cincinnati lost to Arizona. Like, there's nothing.
And there's nothing in the horizon that's going to help them either.
That's the problem. I mean, there's nothing you can point to other than just keep stomping this mediocre competition and hope that the metrics like you enough to maybe crack the door.
So to your point, going back to the potential relaying of information that may put a certain conference in better light than others, let's not remember, kids, that this is all entertainment. Everybody is trying to get you to turn on the television, to read their stories. Look at me. Hello. I am a walking, talking contradiction. This is all part of it. The reality is everybody wants to have a shot, even the dumb and dumber, so you're saying there's a chance until there's absolutely no longer a shot. And that's going to go until December, man. And that's what this 12-team playoff provides. And if we get to 16 teams, God help us all. But the reality is right now, if we're talking about our local teams, BYU has a shot. They control their destiny. You win out. You beat Texas Tech, you're in.
Mm-hmm.
Utah, they only have themselves to blame if they don't get in. Sorry. You can beat bad teams. And this is one thing we need to talk about. We need to go through like when you're at the doctor's office and it's like the 1 to 10 pain chart.
Uh-huh.
We need to do this with college football programs. But rather than the smile, let's just go bad, mediocre, average, good, great. 5.
That's 5?
That's 5.
Yeah.
Where would you put our local teams?
I think BYU fans have a lot to feel good about right now, even though, the Tech game wasn't great. And I think so it's an interesting way to ask the question as it pertains to where I feel the Utah fan community is right now. Because I think there's this faction of Ute fans that believe this team playing the way they are right now, specifically offensively, is as good as anything we've seen. I mean, look.
Is that seriously a narrative?
Well, hold on. Let me unpack
You're
it.
killing
Okay.
me.
So, like 22, 23 Rose Bowl teams, right?
This team doesn't
The
compare.
2019 team, which I always say, like, on paper, might be the best team Kyle ever had.
Most talented
Yeah,
team.
on paper.
Yeah.
And then, obviously the 2 undefeated teams. So, does this team belong in the conversation with that group based off of their averaging 51 points a game since the BYU loss? And whether or not you think that's the case, the fact of the matter is we'll never know because I don't think they're going to have a chance to showcase it.
Well, because they lost to the 2 best teams they
Correct.
played. So, again, let's be realistic here, and we can't fall victim to the moment. If Utah is putting down bad teams at a level that maybe they haven't before in the past, good for them. That's what you're supposed to do when you're a good team. But they're not a great team. Devin Dampier is hurt. I think his halftime stats were like 6 of 14 for like 39 yards. That's not going to beat a Notre Dame in this theoretical like.
And you can't run over them the way you've run over these other teams.
Utah runs it 61% of the time. They're the second best rushing offense in the country. That's what they do. But as I've said on this show ad nauseum this whole fall, if Utah was going to get to where it wanted to at the CFP, they were going to have to beat a team through the air, and they haven't been able to do that this year. And that's what happens when you have a quarterback who runs 12 to 20 times a game sometimes. Like this is what happens, and I'm not faulting him for being injured and playing hurt. This is the nature of the game. This is football. This is a violent game, and people have to gut it out. But Utah runs the ball 60% of the time for a reason, because they're good at it. They have one of the best offensive lines in the country, but they also aren't a threat in the air. And a lot of these teams, guess what? A lot of these teams have really good receivers and really good quarterbacks and really good offensive lines. And I think that, to me, is the differentiator.
Yeah, and it's going to be, if we're going to, we can just do the hypothetical thing. If you're going to play one of these legitimate top 10 teams by any metric, you won't be able to rely on the ability to run it over like you did against Baylor and, like Colorado. You did against Cincinnati and Colorado. Like, look, I'm not taking anything away from how impressive it's looked against these teams. But when you talk about whether or not Utah belongs in the elite of college football this year, to your point, if you rely on one dynamic, the best teams are going to find a way to at least limit it. You got to be able to do other things.
Bird Ficklin is not having 75-yard runs and barely being touched or stiff-arming defensive backs into the ground if you're playing an SEC team or a Big Ten team.
Yeah.
Utah's offensive line is very good. They can part the Red Seas when they're going up against defensive lines who are not good, because they are good. But when you come up against a defensive line that is good, it's a little harder. Case in point, Texas Tech.
And BYU.
I think Bray had the jet sweep game where I think he went for like 113 yards or something. But yes, Wayshawn Parker wasn't as effective. Devin Dampier got hurt. Nakari Rogers wasn't really a factor. But yes, that to me is the differentiator. I did not know that we are putting this team in the same conversation as recent. I mean, this team offensively to me doesn't even hold a candle to those Rose Bowl teams. Those Rose Bowl teams had like 4 insanely good running backs. They had Cam Rising at full health. They had 2 NFL tight ends. Well, they had Dalton Kincaid and Brant Keithy before he got hurt. But like, this team does not have that, and it doesn't need it right now. But I hate the comparison game. I can't believe you got me going down this road.
Well, I mean, the point of the exercise is simply this. Like, if you are one of the either Ute fans, or if you're masquerading as a media member, even though you're a Ute fan, that is in the category of this team is as good as anything we've seen for a long time, the reason I bring it up in that context is there's no way that we'll ever know, because also part of the narrative is they figured something out and they're playing their best football now. And the committee themselves has told us, and they're telling us right now, by the way, Notre Dame's a perfect example. Okay, 2 losses, but it was your first 2 games. You've run off 8 straight since. We're not going to hold you accountable for 2 losses early on to 2 teams that we like. They're good.
One team that is going to be potentially
Correct.
number 2 in the college football
two
playoff.
very good teams, but they're not penalizing Notre Dame for those losses because they're good losses, and they were also months ago. Mm-hmm. But what they're telling us is we're trying to analyze who you are today. And by the time the final CFP rankings are released, Utah's loss to BYU will have been 6 weeks ago. Does the committee see Utah as a different team now than they did then? So it's not just like it's more in a vacuum, like who Utah football is today, because they have been a lot better since the loss. But you have to bring into play how good you think the competition has been. That's the issue.
The schedule lined up for Utah. I mean, they only have themselves to blame. They had Texas Tech at home, their hardest game of the year at home. They lost by 24 points. Forgot to tell you, after a hit a couple weeks ago, I had some fans in my mentions.
Okay, look at you.
Saying, we didn't get blown out, dude. Devin was hurt. I'm like, listen, man, if you lose by 24 points at home, you got blown out. I don't care. Anyways.
We all saw the rock fight for 3 quarters, but the final score is the final score.
Yeah.
It just is.
The CFP committee is not going to go through the play-by-play breakdown in the scorekeeping book that they can access online. They had Texas Tech at home. They lost. They had to beat BYU. They lost. Now, there could be things that go their way. Crazy things can happen. And this season has shown us that crazy things can happen. I think it's asking too much at this point. I think Utah needed their schedule to give them somebody good late in the year in order to, A, get that really marquee win on their resume and / impress the committee beyond the S&P 500.
Again, S&P Plus and Football Power Index. No, and you're right. I mean, and this is also, dude, it's such a great sport in so many ways, but it's also so arbitrary and weird in so many ways where, once upon a time, we've had two youth football teams that have won every game on their schedule, but they couldn't play for a championship. It was a much different time. And obviously there's P4, P5, according to G5, or, juxtaposed to G5 or G6. And but to try to analyze exactly how this stuff is going to go down away from the actual head-to-head or action on the field is what makes it kind of maddening. Because, again, and to your point, the percentages indicate that neither team is likely to get in. BYU has a cleaner path because they can win out and go to Arlington, and Utah has to smash both their final opponents and hope these advanced metrics that like them are enough to potentially include them in the case that BYU goes to the Big 12 championship game and gets their heads kicked in. And then maybe you backdoor your way in as an at-large, but that's
neither team's getting in.
It's a tough ask only because they don't have anything on their resume that they can point to and say we did that. Now, in a different year, maybe your non-con game you scheduled years ago against UCLA is against a good UCLA team, but that wasn't the case. So you schedule non-con best laid plans, but then suddenly for BYU, Stanford's in this weird pivot year, and for Utah, UCLA's trying it's just tough. Like, for everything that you try to do to make sure your team is in the best possible spot, there are certain things that are completely out of your control that are very applicable to how the committee analyzes this whole thing.
What's weird is once upon a time, in very recent memory, it was you have to go undefeated. And now you're in an era where 2 losses or even 3 losses might get you in, but that is where it is the most arbitrary. It is the most subjective, and you leave it up to fate, and you leave it in the hands of a bunch of strangers in a room and wherever they meet. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, and it's just kind of a weird thing, and they adjust their formula and approach every year to try to tinker to get better here, better there, and it's different year to year. I mean, if you're a coach, if you're Kalani, if you're Witt, you can only control on what you can control during the week to make sure your team is 1-0, as all the coaches say. And if you look at Bama, if you look at the SEC, this week, CK, as you know, is your annual rite of passage for SEC football where we don't have to play anybody.
Who's playing the Citadel?
We've got Samford, Texas A&M. There is a chance Mizzou could make Oklahoma a little bit uncomfortable, but Missouri, I think, is without their starting quarterback. That game is in Norman. Georgia plays Charlotte, who's 1-9. Bama, who will finish the season with the Iron Bowl that can get a little weird, plays Eastern Illinois at Bryant-Denny. They're going to win by 50. So I suppose there's a scenario in play where the Iron Bowl at times gets a little weird, but Auburn's 1-6 in the SEC. Maybe they upset Alabama because that game is in Auburn. Notre Dame's not going to lose. They've got Syracuse this week, then Stanford. Again, maybe SC gets Oregon. Oregon does travel up to Washington, I think, final
they do.
Week of the season. That game can get a little weird. There's a little bit of wiggle room, but so many things have to fall into place for either Utah or BYU. It does feel like we're headed to Texas Tech as your lone Big 12 team.
Josh Furlong does a good job of kind of mapping out scenarios, who works at KSL.com. He does the yeoman's work that my brain could not even comprehend. I wonder at this point what the flow chart would look like in terms of like what, as a Utah fan, you want to have happen on a week-to-week basis. You got it for me?
Well, I can tell you from a Big 12 standpoint, right.
but like Big 10, like you're mentioning SC, Oregon, like both of those teams are going to be ahead of Utah. Like, what do you want SC to win at Autzen and then Oregon to lose again to basically fall out completely?
I think you want Oregon to lose twice. Okay. But here's what's interesting about the current landscape of the Big 12, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, if BYU loses to Cincinnati, then Utah gets in via the tiebreaker. Here's the wild card.
Arizona State can get in still.
Arizona State is actually more likely to get in than either because of what happened last week. Cincinnati loses to Arizona, and therefore Utah's win against Cincinnati is weighted differently this week than it was last week. So the reason Arizona State would have the tiebreakers, they have the win over Tech.
Right.
They beat Texas Tech.
Yep.
So if BYU loses to Cincinnati, if you're Utah, you also need Arizona State to lose to either Colorado or Arizona.
Arizona could be doable. Colorado
Maybe.
ain't happening.
No, not at all. And maybe Arizona gets them rivalry game. Arizona's been better, but you need both BYU and Arizona State to lose one more
just
time.
to get to Arlington.
Yes,
Yeah,
just to get to Arlington.
That's asking a lot.
So that's one path. And the other path, as we've talked about, is BYU wins out, which I think they're going to. They go to Arlington, Tech smokes them. Utah beats the final two opponents in impressive enough fashion where the committee looks at them as an at-large possibility. That's the other route.
Because 12 is going to be the group of 5 school. So basically you're going to look at potentially 9, 10, and 11?
Yeah, and I think if you're Utah, you got to be in the top 10.
And you got to be in the top 10, and then you're going to have to be in the mix with the Oregons and the SCs and the Bamas and the Oklahomas. It's tight, man. I just don't see it.
It would take a mini miracle. It would, and last week you really needed Oklahoma.
I was going to say that could be the death knell.
Yeah, you needed Oklahoma to go down to Tuscaloosa and lose. I think most people thought they were going to do that, but it was an ugly game. Bama lost the turnover margin 3-0 and it still almost beat them. I mean, it was a rock fight and it was ugly. But the results that you needed, the only one that you got is Texas went down to Georgia and got. Texas will slide, I think, past both BYU and Utah tonight.
Yeah, I agree. I just don't know. I just don't see Utah getting in as an at-large. Once we get to the first week of December, now a lot of things can happen. Like you said, there are scenarios, but I think if you're a Utah fan, you have to hope for all of those dominoes that you outlined to fall in order to get to Arlington for a potential rematch against Texas Tech. But I think that's also asking too much.
Yeah, I mean, finally, if you go to the matchups 2 weeks from now, so this is assuming Utah handles Kansas State. They're like a 17-point favorite. Utah will be on the road at Kansas. They'll be a heavy favorite. So we're assuming Utah wins their final 2 games. The Ole Miss game at Mississippi State in Starkville puts the antennas up a little bit.
Egg Bowl, Lane Kiffin,
well,
is he staying?
Yeah,
is he
I
going?
mean, that's the thing. If you're a player for Ole Miss right now and all you're hearing is your coach and his family are taking tours to Florida and LSU, is that enough for you to tap out and maybe you get got by Mississippi State because Ole Miss is at 7. We'll see where they're at tonight. Georgia's not losing to Georgia Tech. Texas has one more shot, dude. They play A&M final. And look, if Texas takes care of A&M, you know what the committee is going to do. They will put Texas in even though they have 3 losses.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, look.
Listen.
Is it always sunny in Philadelphia? That
Charlie.
gift for the mean
yes.
I feel like Charlie right now because I'm really reaching. We talked about Oregon going up to Husky Stadium, which could get a little weird. Oklahoma, their final game is against LSU. Now, of course, LSU, it's in Oklahoma, it's in Norman.
Okay.
So that could be somewhat interesting. We already talked about the Iron Bowl. Notre Dame will smoke Stanford. Well, we stretched and tried.
We did it. S&P 500.
We stretched and tried to find a path for Utah to get in. It's going to be tough, but we'll catch a break. Coming up on the other side, is this Kyle's last home game at Rice-Eccles Stadium? Also, a very special announcement for our local soccer club we might tease. Chris Camerani's live in studio. 1 hour down, 3 hours to go. Keep it here on ESPN 700. The third iteration of the college football playoff rankings released tonight. Keep in mind that is a 6:30 Mountain Time release. The time slots so far have been very inconsistent. Week 1, it was at 6 o'clock Mountain Time, so right after we said goodnight. Week 2 was at 5 o'clock Mountain Time, so we were able to bring them to you live on the show. And then tonight, they are going to bring it to you between the two games at the State Farm Championship at the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. Michigan State, Kentucky starts at 4:30, so about an hour and a half. And then tonight was supposed to be Darren Peterson against Boozer's kid, Cam Boozer, but I think Peterson is hurt. So it's Kansas-Duke. So in between Michigan State, Kentucky, and Kansas-Duke is when you're going to get these rankings released. So they're forcing you, Chris, to watch college basketball tonight.
Mark Pope's my guy.
Is Mark Pope your guy?
I mean, once upon a time, when he was the coach at UVU, he let me hang out with the team for like an entire day behind the scenes, back when you kind of have to build that type of clout.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fascinating. Really cool guy, really smart guy.
Yep.
Seemed like a human being in an industry where there aren't many human beings, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
But yeah, Mark has a difficult job these days.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different than living in Orem or in Provo.
Well, and also for listeners that may not have this frame of reference, the Kentucky basketball fan base is probably the only college basketball fan base that's like a college football fan base.
Oh, sure.
Big Blue Nation. They are lunatics.
Ashley Judd.
Shout out Ashley Judd.
Double Jeopardy, starring Tommy Lee Jones.
Good pull. No, but that fan base, they're crazy. So it was interesting when Mark was here coaching the Y. After Calipari left Kentucky, I said the next day, I'm like, I wonder if they talked to Mark. Apparently, they got 3 or 4 no's before they landed on Mark Pope. But I think if you're a BYU fan, you might feel like you fell forward a little bit because things are pretty good at the basketball landscape with Kevin Young.
Sure, yeah. They don't have Colin Chandler, though.
They do not have Colin Chandler. They do have this kid named A.J. DeBonce, who's pretty good.
Never heard of him.
Dude, they went to Boston to play UConn, which was a wild scene because Storrs is northern Connecticut. I think it's only 2 hours away from Boston, maybe a little bit more. So mostly UConn fans there. BYU goes down 20, and A.J. just...
And he's a Boston kid.
Yeah, Boston kid. He just turned it on. It's rare to see a kid that young control a college basketball game against a UConn team. Like the Alex Carabin kid has been at UConn for like 7 years.
Wasn't he like on that those championship teams?
Yes. So it was fun to see AJ turn that on. I mean, I think they've got something pretty special down there. But, you know, we'll move on, do some other things here. But let's kind of wrap up this college football conversation. Interesting subplot for Saturday where it's kind of like, I feel like most people that are very connected to the program believe that this is the final home game for Witt. The last game he's going to coach at Rice-Eccles Stadium. And I've kind of been talking about this week. Like, feels like something should be done to honor the coach if it's his final home game. But obviously, if, like, I had this funny visual of Harlan walking into Witt's office and be like, hey, Saturday's it, right? We're going to do this. And Kyle being like, can you please leave? I'm focused on the game. But it does feel like something should be done for him.
Well, Kyle has it made. If they were 6-5 or 5-6 or whatever, what's their record right now?
They are 8-2.
If they were 6-4 even, I think there would be a little more pressure to be like, let's give all of the flowers to Kyle. But they have, quote-unquote, everything to play for. Kyle said it yesterday. They're taking it 1 week at a time, as he's known to do. The fact that they are still in the mix, I think, absolutely lends to the fact that they will do absolutely zilch. If they were, like I said, if they were kind of maybe barreling toward trying to be bowl-worthy, maybe. If they were sub 500, if it was one of the last couple years, I think you absolutely would see something to try to be like, listen, man, the last 2 years have been rough. This year's no exception. Kyle's our GOAT. Let's send him out. But the fact that they are 8-2, like in theory still in the mix, this is absolutely up Kyle's wheelhouse.
And, you know, I wonder what his reaction would be, even if they were hovering around 500, if he was presented with the option. I feel like he wouldn't want it.
What do you give a coach? A whistle? a a signed football?
I don't know. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see
a Huffy
it.
bike for Whit.
I was
Huffy.
I was talking to Sean about this. Like, you know where the Whittingham family sits to watch the game.
Mm.
I think it'll tip our hand a little bit if Kyle's mother is in attendance, or maybe if there's a large, like his kid who coaches for the Chiefs, Alex.
Because they have a game on Sunday.
Right. So if we see a larger Whittingham contingent than normal, I think that's all you need to know.
Yeah, but is it weird to say that, like, I don't know how much the fans really have to say about it right now because of what's still at stake. The fact that they are still in the mix, the fact that, you know, a lot of results can go their way, I just don't know. And this is probably to Kyle's chagrin, like he's probably doing jumping jacks, 50 push-ups, just thinking about how stoked he is that nobody's going to care about it, that they have a game to play, and this will very likely be his last home game. But I mean, listen, after the Rose Bowl games, you know, you asked me if Whit retires, how are we going to find out? And like, I'm still of the mind that like you're going to get a press release at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday with one quote from Whit, one quote from Harlan, one quote from Taylor Randall, and that's going to be it. I mean, I could be proven wrong.
Yeah,
maybe his family talks him into doing the farewell presser. I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it now. And this is all conjecture. We're all just existing in this alternate reality where Kyle does decide to hang it up, but it's not a done deal until it's a done deal.
No, it's not. I do wonder what post-football life will look for Kyle. I wonder how that looks for him.
Lots of black diamonds, lots of motorcycles.
And, you know, there's a role carved out for him in the athletic department as kind of an advisor.
Sure.
I have seen
Godfather
dynamics like that in the past.
Well, McBride's been around the program a lot. I mean, going back to when Urban took over, when Kyle took over, maybe not at that level. I don't know. I just maybe feel like Kyle doesn't seem like a half-ass kind of guy. Like he kind of got a whole asset. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I was going to say. And I also wonder in an honest moment where Morgan is with all of this.
Oh, I'm sure he's ready.
Well, but of course he's ready. I think he's been ready. I think it's beyond that at this point. Part of me feels like it's not just like Morgan's ready, like let's do this, like it's time, right? And part of me feels like Morgan is eager to make this his own thing. And I don't know this. I want to be clear, but I just have to wonder, for a guy like Morgan who is as competitive as he is he sick of hearing like cutting the cloth of Kyle, prodigal son, and it's just going to be a continuation of what we've seen? I think he wants to put his own stamp on this program.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. But my curveball to that would be like, what job is out there that he is currently better suited for, that he knows the ins and outs, he knows every nook and cranny, he knows how to recruit locally, he has ties with the state. I mean, like, he's known in the Texas high school football realms as one of the best recruiters in Texas. But like, you want to go coach Baylor?
No,
you want to go coach?
No, I think it's a great.
It just works.
A great fit.
And to your point, like, yes, I'm sure he's tired about hearing like he's running Fred Whittingham's defense and all this stuff, and to an extent he is. But yeah, once he gets his shot, I'm sure he'll make it his own, and he'll have to deal with the plethora of issues and everything else that a college football head coach has to deal with in 2025.
And you know, it's okay to utilize a blueprint and a format that has worked. I do feel like there is a faction of the fan base that is ready for a change, that wants a change, and honestly, CK wants more, right? And I always kind of battle with this because I'm old enough to remember when the football program wasn't near what it is today. I attended the U when it was a basketball school, when Ronnie Mack was trying to build it up. So I kind of have a hard time with some of the entitlement from some of the football fans. Like if I told you that you were going to potentially get 10-2 this year, now, yes, you would have preferred to beat your rival. You take that and you run away. And the standard that Witt has set is a much higher bar, but I do kind of get a sense that most people believe there's more meat on the bone, and instead of losing in a Rose Bowl after winning a Pac-12 championship, let's go win one. Let's go to a CFP. Let's qualify. Let's do those things. Now, there are 19 teams left that are alive. And the fact that you're in mid-November and you're one of those 19 teams, that can't go understated. But I do feel like there's some sort of redeeming feeling from a faction of this fan base that wants to see something different and ultimately believe that there's more that can be achieved.
Is this the same faction that believes that this year's team is as good as the Rose Bowl teams or the undefeated
I'll have to
season?
do some. I'll have to do some internet research and do some comparisons.
Some Charlie.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure there is a faction of the fans that is ready to see what Morgan can do as head coach. I'm sure they're excited to see a younger head coach who has his entire career ahead of him, as opposed to Kyle being at the twilight of his career. As we see in college football right now, it is turning into a young man's game more so than ever. Like, granted, the Kirby Smarts and the Mike Elkos, they're on the older side, but you look at a lot of these teams that are in the mix. It's Dan Lanning's my age. Like, a lot of these guys are young guys, and it's part of the, I think, necessary requirement these days to be able to, stimulate a fan base, stimulate the booster base, engage with fans, relate to players. And I don't think those are all things that I think Morgan will be able to do just fine. And it's another reason why when they needed to hire an offensive coordinator last year, they were transparent. And I think rightly so, that Kyle was saying, like, this isn't a me decision. This is a me and Morgan decision.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think if it had just been a Kyle decision, then you wade into some potentially choppy waters about, how much longer is this tenure going to go on. But if this is it, this is it. And Kyle's going to ride his motorcycle off Foothill and just go do his thing.
Well, let me ask you this. I'll reduce the question then, just to get your opinion. Is it realistic to expect another level to be achieved by Morgan or something beyond what Kyle has done? Is that a realistic expectation?
It's realistic because of what Utah has achieved under Kyle, and it's realistic because of what Utah achieved under Urban. It's natural to be part of this bell curve, so to speak, to keep climbing. And now, luckily for Utah, you are part of a 12-team playoff conversation. We could potentially see a 16-team playoff conversation. Apparently, the Big Ten was talking about 28 teams or something.
Let them all in.
Get me out of here with that. But, yes, it is realistic, but it is very difficult. It is, to your point, if there is a faction of the fan base that believes that a 10-2 record for this year's team is underachieving, then they're up in the night. They are seriously up in the night. And granted, fans, short for fanatic, I get it. But based on what transpired the last 2 years in the program, with all of the injuries, with the questions around Cam Rising's health status, all that stuff, if you can get to 10 wins with a revamped offense, with the defense looking as it usually has, you take it and you run, man.
Yeah, do.
You take it and you run. And honestly, like I said, it's harsh to say, but they're not going to be in because of their own doing. They're not going to be in, not because they got screwed by the committee. Like, we could have this conversation if they had won one of those Texas Tech or BYU games, and then maybe they don't get in. Then you can cry foul. They didn't win either. And that is just the reality, and you got to deal with it.
Well, and the other dynamic that I always consider is, and I've said this for years, in college football specifically, more so, in my opinion, than any sport on any level, the right hire as head coach. It's why there are all these arms races for specific coaches. Like, the right hire at head coach changes everything instantly, and the wrong hire at head coach goes the wrong way really quickly, where suddenly you're looking around. Exactly. You're like, you think you have the guy, and then within very little time, you realize you might not have the guy. Then suddenly your program has fallen off the cliff. I understand your point about Urban, Kyle, expect it to continue. There are plenty of examples of a legend who's been at the end, and you're kind of like, all right, time for him to go. Then the new dude steps in, and it's the wrong situation, and it goes the wrong way. I'm not saying that's the deal here. I am saying be careful what you're wishing for if you're one of the people that is ready to see Kyle walk away.
Well, and another interesting byproduct of this whole current state of college football is how many guys are choosing to stay put, whereas I feel like the previous generation was your Urban, you're building something awesome at Utah. Florida's open. Got to go. Got to go. More resources, more money, better talent. Got to go. Win a national championship or two. But, like, you look at Curt Cignetti, man. Curt Cignetti is at a basketball school going to make $11 million a year.
And deserves it.
Yeah. Lane Kiffin seems like he's going to stay at Ole Miss when he could go to LSU or Florida.
You think he's staying?
That would be my guess. I'm trying to think who else is who. I mean, you're just seeing a kind of
Kenny Dillingham has been rumored
talking about staying at ASU.
Yeah.
If you can stimulate your fan base and your booster base, you have a shot, man. You just have a shot because the money is out there. You just got to prove it to them.
Yeah, if you're Kenny Dillingham and LSU calls, you leave ASU. I'm sorry.
You do?
You leave Arizona State for the LSU job.
Man.
You don't think so? First of all, ASU will not match that contract offer. We can just start with the monetary portion.
I mean, it depends on
even though money's not real.
If you're measuring quality of life, you are a hometown kid. I think it's extra special to be able to stay in your hometown if you have that type of draw. Listen, LSU, man, things burn bright down on the bayou. Like, it gets Coach O. Don't forget, Coach O assembled maybe the most talented team in the history of college football.
So
and
fun to watch.
18 months later, they were like, you're gone.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong, and it's why these golden parachutes are built in. You know, it's interesting you referenced the hometown dynamic because you talked about, Urban being here for a couple of years, and even though he said, hey, I'm here for the long haul, we all knew that as soon as something opened, and Urban was different, right? Like, there's no tie to Salt Lake. He's not LDS. And everyone behind closed doors, when they realized just how dynamic he was, realized Ohio State, Notre Dame, ended up being Florida, then Ohio State. He was going to follow that path. Do you think there's anything in Morgan that does just want to stay here? LDS kid, Salt Lake kid,
absolutely.
you kid, no interest in any other. Like, this would not happen. If LSU was interested in Morgan Scalley, would he answer the phone?
Yeah, you would answer the phone. But again, it comes down to, for a lot of people, it comes down to guarantees, guaranteed money, quality, like the quality of life thing. A lot of these guys have young kids. Does it make sense to uproot your family? More often than not, it does. Morgan's a legacy kid. His dad played at the U.
Right.
His dad went to
that's a Utah family, dude.
Yeah, it'd be like talking about the Bartons being like, are you going to go play at BYU? Like I don't know if is there any more Bartons left?
I believe Lander's the youngest.
Okay, so if in theory, if there was another Barton, you'd be like, I'm going to go to BYU.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Well, in the jobs that we've heard kind of attached to Morgan in the past, rumors have been like Colorado State, right? Like, there hasn't been anything with enough cachet for him to consider looking in a different direction. I just wonder, the point of me asking you about LSU, I could throw Florida or Penn State in there. Is there anything that takes Morgan Scalley away from Salt Lake? Because there's something interesting about this place. I don't know if it's the LDS tie. I don't know if, people don't want to leave here. A lot of people that grew up here.
Hooks into you.
Well, I mean, it's, it's one of the things that was interesting about, when my dad left the Jazz, we go back to New York, and we are, at 10 years old, I go from, Wasatch Elementary, Salt Lake City, Utah, suddenly, boom, right in the middle of the Northeast. For 1 year, I was at Roland Hall. I would have gone to Roland Hall if we stayed high school. That probably wouldn't have gone well.
Tennis player.
But no, not at all. But we're suddenly, supplanted because he wanted to try his skill on the biggest stage, which I've always respected about him. But it doesn't, whether it's Morgan or Kalani or Kyle, we have all these guys that are so long tenured, and even if they have opportunities to go elsewhere, it feels like they just want to do their thing here. It's an interesting thing. Somebody should do a documentary.
Well, we've talked about this before. Stretch it to the professional ranks. Why was Jerry the head coach here for 20-something years? You could say the same thing, Jason. Jason probably could have left a little earlier than he did before he did in 2014.
Badly wanted to come back for years.
Exactly, and that too. So, yes, it is maybe we've said it a lot, quality of life, an opportunity to build something yourself, make it your own, a fan base that is rabid, will get behind you and support you if you give them a product and provide them with belief that you can do something cool every year. Those things are hard to find.
Because as I'm thinking out loud, I don't know that there's an opportunity out there that Morgan Scalley would look at that would take him away from what he has in front of him.
No.
I think this is just what he wants to do.
Yeah, you're entering a realm of the unknown, and I'm not saying he wouldn't be qualified, but it's almost like you can, if you're Morgan, you have so much institutional knowledge about this place. You, like I said, you know every nook and cranny about it. You played here, your dad played here, you coached here, you've won here. Now comes the hard part. You have to follow the guy.
Yeah.
And then how do you one up the guy?
Yeah, which is a tough challenge. It's also interesting to consider, people that didn't grow up here or don't have ties here when it comes to families that have been around forever who do come here as transplants, and whether or not they kind of get the whole, like, the claws are in you as well. Like, Quinn was here 8-9 years, and there were a lot of reasons why he wanted to leave. You referenced Jerry, Jason. I don't know. I'm just doing this exercise out loud. I think it's interesting. All right, before I say you lose, because I know you got to get out of here, there's a special RSL announcement on Thursday. I am not allowed to say what it is.
Designated player?
It is not it's not a designated player that is signed by RSL. It does involve a designated player.
Ooh.
But help me understand why this calendar shift in Major League Soccer.
You are now on the same footing as every other major league in the world. You aren't up against it when it comes to transfer windows, which as we've talked about, has been the bane of RSL's recent existence, because if you can't get deals done in the winter window, you suddenly can't bring guys in until July or August, and by that point, 80% of your schedule has already been played. You're asking international players to get up to speed in real time in the dog days of summer. It's just not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
The tricky part, and I'm sure we will talk about this a lot on the drive Monday to Friday, 2 to 5.
2 to 6, live.
You are going to see a bevy of markets need to expand and invest an insane amount of resources into the fan experience. Because if you're talking about Salt Lake City, Commerce City, Columbus, Ohio, Chicago, Philadelphia, yeesh. Ain't nobody trying to freeze their you-know-what off in December. Or I guess they're going to take a 6-week break in February. I know we've had some CONCACAF games in late February before, but your dad's stadium is going to need some serious upgrades.
I think it's weird. And
it's weird.
I don't understand the ecosystem like you do. I just think of it from the standpoint of, historically speaking, there have been 1 or 2 games a year where the orange ball has to come out and Andres Gomez is trying to run through snow.
Your guy.
And my guy, shout out, rest in peace. Not dead, just not here anymore. And now it seems like for a league that's trying really hard to garner interest still, if you're asking fans to sit out in the freezing cold 10, 15 times a year, it's just a weird ask to me.
It's a weird ask, but you finally get to ditch one of your major complaints about the schedule,
which is
odd breaks.
Odd breaks. Besides the one they're going to take in midwinter.
Okay, I'll give you that one, which most of the world takes anyways.
Oh, these are things I don't know.
But not to the extent that they will here.
Not smashing Bundesliga tape.
Not yet.
Not yet.
But yes, you're going to have to invest a lot of infrastructural. It's not a word. A lot of infrastructure into that stadium. But you're going to leave behind a lot of the idiosyncrasies of the previous calendar that used to be the bane of your existence.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Good insight, man. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Catch a break. Craig Bolerjack on the other side. ESPN 700. Triumphant return of Dan McMahon today. Tim McMahon from ESPN, celebrity reporter who signed a contract extension. He's really blown up over the past year. I feel responsible for Tim's star rising. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say that to him when he joins us. Dave Fox will join us live in studio, so, listen to that if you want. We go to Los Angeles, where I picture Craig Bowler, Jack, maybe Santa Monica on the pier, looking at the ocean, enjoying the warm weather. Am I close, Bowler?
Oh, no, not at all. Big guy, I tell you, rain, go away. It poured down here yesterday and last night, but today it's a little better. It's still cloudy and a little cool for Los Angeles, but still a nice little one-day getaway. And tonight we go back to business, right, against the Los Angeles Lakers. Nice start, by the way, for LA, 10-4.
Yeah, for sure. Just real quick, I read that LeBron practiced this week. Do you have any idea if he's playing tonight?
I just got a status report from the Lakers, and they put him as questionable. If he was probable, I would almost green-light it. But, hey, we all can be surprised, right? They want to keep this under wraps, and I get it. It would be his season debut. It would probably – Spence, you've been around games like that where it's a madhouse, especially when anytime you involve LeBron James. So he's got a back issue, sciatica. I'm no doctor, but I know that's painful, and he's taken a lot of falls. I was just breaking down his minutes, Spence. It's nuts. I mean, it's all time. Minutes played, 59,041. He's taken a lot of tumbles. That's just the way he plays. And he'll be 41 come December 30th. So, as great a shape as he's in, you're trying to run past Father Time or outrun him, but sometimes I think he's getting a little closer. But that back, for anyone who's got back troubles, that's an issue, especially if you're going to be playing at the level he does.
Yeah, no doubt. When I saw sciatica, I'm like, all right, well, LeBron's officially old because that's the right like that's the injury all of us start to kind of experience when we age, right?
Yeah, it took Bird out. It did. Larry, played the same way. I mean, he was a tough defensive stopper at times, and he took a lot of tumbles on the floor, on the old parquet floor, and it takes a lot of athletes out. It's just part of it. Weren't built to take that type of stress, at this level. I mean, you can be in great shape, which LeBron has had, dedicated himself to. The people around him have put him on the floor now for hard to believe, Spence. I just still stare at this sometimes when I look at, am I right, 23 years in the league?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happens when you jump out of high school. But phenomenal career, but injuries, obviously taking a swipe at him right now.
No doubt. All right, Bowler. Last year was an interesting process with Lowry as far as, holding him out here or there. And I just wonder if people forgot who he is because he's reminding everybody once again, if he plays like this, he's going to be an all-star again. So it's just nice to be reminded that the Jazz do have an elite player in Lowry Markkanen, yeah?
Oh, my goodness. What a start. Top 6 scorer. 30, nearly 31 a game, and what a show he put on against Chicago in double OT. Spence, you can break down all the numbers you want, but the last 3, I mean, all-star worthy and then some. 41 a game. He's found his three-point shot. He's found his inside game. He's 3-level scorer, 47% from 3, 56% overall from the floor. He's getting to the free throw line. He can rebound. He's even blocking some shots. I mean, he's really – I'll tell you, since the Euro basketball tournament, I mean, he came back in great shape. The Jazz, gave him some rest time during the preseason, and he's just hit the floor. Let's just call it what it is. He's balling. And, it just seems like he's a stronger player, from your chair. I mean, I think he's more mobile. I think he's able to take that first initial, contact and then play through it with something. We only saw him 47 games last year. And I'm not sure how engaged he truly was, but this year it's a totally different Lowry Markkanen. And I think we've all just been going, wow, go play. And that's what he's done. And he seems strong, seems fast, seems able to go left to right and kind of pick and choose. I mean, every defense is honed in on him. And maybe Keontae has helped some. in the early couple of games before Walker got hurt. I thought the two bigs had played well together, passing, but Nurkic, has opened up some space for him too. The way the big man screens out, it leaves a lot of space for Markkanen, and he's taking advantage of it.
So you referenced Keontae, and we'll continue to revisit this, Bowler, because we know who Lowry is. We know what he has shown since he arrived and played the system that Will has implemented. So we don't need to see anything else from Lowry. It's nice that he's playing awesome, but we know that he has that in him. And ultimately, if we're going to analyze this team through the lens and the prism of when will they be good again, we have to continue to watch the progress or lack thereof of these young players. And if Keontae can pop like this, if the beginning of the season is real for Keontae, to me, it's the biggest takeaway through 13, 14 games. The numbers are good. Game-winning shot the other night. His decision-making down the stretch continues to improve incrementally. What stands out most to you, year 3, Keontae George, the start of this year?
Spence, I think it's attitude, and that's where it comes with growth and maturity, maybe making the decision after talking to Austin, Danny, Justin, and obviously Will about who do you want to be. And I think he really went down deep this summer to figure out, okay, look, the kid in me, the attitude's got to go away. And I think that's what I've seen from him in my interaction with him on the floor, on the bus, seeing him in the hotels. I think he's just a totally refocused young guy who's come out of the kid age into manhood. Saying that, I think you also have to look at the way he's playing and the way that he's, last year, if he had a 5-point half that he did against Chicago on Sunday night, it probably would have ended up in a disastrous way, maybe with 10, a couple of free throws, a couple more fouls down the stretch. I wouldn't have seen the floor in the fourth quarter. But I got to give him credit. I mean, he continued to play hard, head down, 28 in the second half. He's a dead eye from the free throw line. He went, 10 for 10, knocking down over 90+% of his free throw shots. I mean, if that's who he is, Spence, at 22 and change and 7 assists, I mean, that's impressive. And that's the type of player and leadership and also point guard play with Isaiah, mind you, because they have two different tempos in many ways. If you can combine those two with an Ace Bailey who continues to grow, had a rough night with the foul troubles against the Bulls, but that's an intriguing conversation to have because guard play, as you know, I mean, to win titles, you've got to have a guy that really, or two, that can make things happen. And the Jazz have a couple of players that are intriguing because they both have speed, but one plays a little bit more bully ball in Isaiah, but both share the ball extremely well now. And they're the Jazz, a 35 or 38 point assist night, 38 assist night has kind of become commonplace lately. And they call it moving the ball with energy, and that's what I'm watching. That's what I think you're saying too, and it's been impressive. Can it stand the time? Test of time, I guess we'll wait and see, but there are improvements going on here with this young team.
All right, Bowler, as a former ball boy, I've got an issue. Okay, so we need to get into this. Leave us alone.
Yeah.
All right, we're just wiping up sweat. It's a very unglorified situation. And I honestly believe that Will called that timeout so he could get in Mark Davis's ear because he knew he had him.
Right.
Because it was unequivocally unfair. Luckily, it did not cost them the game. But tell me what you saw from your vantage point when it looked like the ball boy was doing his job and the Jazz got a delay of game.
Well, there's two guys that jumped on the floor with those mops, kind of the round, square round mops, kind of. They're different in different arenas. But, I saw him down there and I thought, okay, I didn't see, it happens. There was stop and you got a bunch of sweat. And look, the league always is concerned about player safety. And a game ago last week on the road, mind you, there was a couple of slips. You may remember. I'm thinking it was Detroit. I could be wrong, but I'm thinking you've got to wipe this stuff up. You've had two slips in the last two possessions, both by the Jazz and I think by the Pistons. It may have been in Boston. But I'm thinking always to myself, this safety net that the NBA puts around their players and calling timeout to see if it's a flagrant one in case a hand or an arm or an elbow goes above the shoulders. So then that's stoppage of play, right? So that one really surprised me, and I don't think I've seen Will ever just go off. And Mark Davis, I think, realized that it was a ridiculous call to make. Remember, and this is the one I had to go back in my head and realize that when Keontae came out, you remember, without his jersey, and they had to take he sprinted back to put his game jersey on. And that was the first delay game, and then this one was just, I thought, unnecessary. I thought it was the best decision by the ball boys to come out, mop up some sweat, and let's go play ball. But, man, Will and Mark Davis, they went toe-to-toe, and let's just say the verbiage was it was pretty bright, right? It was pretty good.
Rather colorful, Bowler.
Kevin Love posted that, by the way, saying that this is my coach, and he stood up for the players. He stood up for the team. And, again, I'm sure that's been discussed around the NBA this week, right, about what do you do in a situation again like that. But I've never seen something like that, a delay a game call because of, mopping up the floor. But there you go.
Since you brought up Kevin Love, I wasn't planning on doing this. And, his role on the team certainly it seems to be just as kind of like that classic, the line that Zanuck was using for a while, pups can't raise pups, right? The veteran that can teach these young players how to be pros. But he seems to have a little bit of juice left in him. I wonder if there's any consideration for him. And, he's saying all the right things, that he wants to be here. I think he relocated his wife and kids here. He's got some history in Park City. But at that stage in his career, if he's got some juice left, and he's already won championships, he doesn't have to ring chase. But if you're a contender, are you watching Jazz basketball and saying, you know what, Kevin Love can still give me 10, 12 minutes come playoff time?
Oh, yeah, no question. 18 years in the league. I like his attitude, Spence. I didn't know him. I had brushed by him and had a couple of, congrats on the ring over the last few years when he was in Cleveland. He's a 5-time All-Star. He's always been really a pro. And, that's all. Well, what does that mean, Bowler? You can tell guys who can engage and don't want to be bothered. Kevin Love is a guy that will engage you and have a moment of just discussion, and I've always appreciated that. And when I met him for the first time, he says, "You've been around, man. Hey, good to see you." And I thought, "Oh, yeah, Kev, how are you, man? Welcome." And I didn't know how he was going to respond, but I've watched him. He has great conversations with Will. Does he have, hopes of coaching? I watch him and the way that he interacts with this young team. He may be a hell of a coach, Spence. If that's the direction he wants to go, he doesn't need to do it. But I think if he still loves this game, which I kind of sense he does, he went double digits against Chicago. He's kind of got a tough man's attitude, still runs up and down the floor pretty well, right? So I was surprised that he decided to just stick it out with the Jazz, and I think he's having some fun again with this young team. And with Walker's injury, it's allowed him to become more engaged because he's coming in and backing up whatever Will wants him to do at the 4, right, and playing some 3, and they can shift around a lot of players. And Taylor Hendricks has been out as well. So has given Love, I think, a chance, Spence, to really engage his game again and maybe test himself. And I think he likes what he sees, and I think Will does too. Leadership in the locker room, but also proving it on the floor.
So Will has talked a lot this year about if you don't guard, you're not going to play. And, the emphasis on team defense, because for the past 2 years, the Jazz have been the worst defensive team in pro basketball. If you look at the advanced stats right now, the Jazz are 24th out of 30 teams.
Right.
So they're not last, which I guess is progress. Are you seeing any concerted effort that is improvement on the defensive end? Because the numbers still really aren't great.
Yeah, it's a trickle effect, right? I think it's a slow process. Sensabaugh is a key here. He can shoot, but they need more from him. And I think, obviously, he knows that. Filipowski the same. Walter Clayton Jr. making his rookie debut and hasn't played a couple of games. But, yeah, Spence, I think that's the key to where this team has to go. Elijah Harkless gets constantly complimented by Will, but he's up and down from the Stars and to the Jazz, and he's probably one of the most aggressive defenders the Jazz have. But how do you play him? And, in a league of maybe you can't just play one specialized player unless you want to lock down, one of the top players in the league and you try to put Elijah on him, or the length of Ace Bailey, but he's learning the defensive schemes, right? Sensabaugh, I think, is a key. I mean, he's been in a slump, didn't play. Defense was the key. He's come back last 3, shooting much better. I think his defensive skills kind of go better when he's shooting the ball better. But he's just got to become more consistent. And so does Cody, so does Ace, and even Keontae. Spence, it's a process. And, man, it wears you down as a fan because you want it now. But, watching the league, there's only about maybe 5 or 6 teams that really work it hard on both ends of the floor. And to become elite and be a real true contender to get through an 82-game schedule is difficult to do. And, the process continues. Are the pieces all together? No. Will they be? Well, that's the plan. But, people ask me all the time, what is the time frame? And I'm not privy to that. But you have to hope, too, Spence, that 1 or 2 of these guys actually, once they're 20, they jump into a whole different realm of body and mind. And that, to me, is the most intriguing part. And Keontae may be the first piece of part of this puzzle to kind of see who makes the jump and decides to be an NBA professional. And, again, it's early, but that's what I think the Jazz are hoping, that Keontae has decided what and understands what it takes to be a pro, and a very good one in a very tough league.
What's interesting, Bowler, is I'm digging through these numbers, and I've always talked about this, and it really is a Greg Popovich approach because, Steve Kerr, certainly more of a Greg Popovich disciple than a Phil Jackson disciple. And when Steve took over the Warriors, you saw a lot of the blender ball movement, and Will wants the Jazz to play with that same type of the ball pops. We want good spacing. We want everybody involved. The Jazz are the number 1 team in the NBA in assist percentage. Now, for our listeners, that just simply means the assist basket, or the percentage of baskets made that come off an assist. It's not complicated, but they're number 1. I mean, they're better than everybody in the entire NBA, and they're 24th in offensive rating, which is kind of a really weird outlier, the fact that they're so elite in assist percentage, but their offensive rating isn't great. But it does tell you that they are moving the ball, and they're starting to understand the way Will wants to play on offense.
And, Spence, I'll give you one more stat that Mike Smith dug up for me. We were talking via text on the plane yesterday. In the last 4 games, the Jazz lead the league in scoring. I mean, you put up 150, things are happening, but that was double OT. But they still, in the last 4 games, they've been putting the ball in the hole, 134. And that offensive rating you spoke of has jumped to number 4 over the last 4. So, to your point, the ball movement is extremely on target, and Will talks about this, the ball has energy, and Big T talks about it all the time too. And the blender that kind of came through the, Quinn Snyder days. It's kind of come alive. It's not consistent, but there are moments where you go, wow, man, these guys are looking and throwing, and the ball's not even touching the floor, not even a bounce. I mean, it's bang, bang, bang. And that's what Will wants. I think Collier, when he's on the floor, obviously gets the ball into front court, and the offensive motions are all a little quicker. Keontae does it as well, but there's something about Isaiah who gets into it head up, and he's looking. And I think that's kind of helped too. He was slowed down with that hamstring at the beginning of the season, but he's come on, Spence. And I don't know what you see, but the combination's intriguing to me. And sometimes they play together, but the ball is being pushed ahead, and they're getting an extra pass, which I think has helped open up the floor a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting. The more and more I dig into these numbers, what the Jazz are doing well this year is they're a good rebounding team. They're 4th in the league in offensive rebound percentage. They're 7th in the league in defensive rebound percentage. They're 6th in the league in overall defensive rebound percentage. And they share the basketball. As I said, they're 1st in assist percentage. So they're really hitting the glass. They're sharing the ball. But if you move over to effective field goal percentage, the Jazz are 26th, and true shooting, they're 24th. So in turnover percentage, they're 25th. So they continue to have difficulties guarding. They continue to have difficulties taking care of the basketball, and they continue to have difficulty simply just making shots. And you know what that tells me, Craig? There are young players on this basketball team.
Right. I mean, that's the definition. You know, what you just said is, if fans, want to break it down even more, that is truly the whole definition of a young team who has moments but not consistency. And, Will said he's liked the shots, Spence, that the Jazz have had, but they didn't make them. But suddenly they're knocking down 17, 18 threes a game. And I'll tell you one stat that I really just took and I thought, wow, I had to double take this, but they had obviously a season low of only 9 turnovers in double overtime against Chicago. Now, the Jazz, as you know, are in the 24, 25, 26 turnover category, and sometimes they've given up 30, 34 points a game early this season in that category. You can't win games when you're playing uphill. I know that's an old Jerry Sloan adage, but it's true. Why give a team an extra 14, 15 points, and that just makes you have to work harder? And I think a young team then presses, and you turn the ball even more because you're trying to impress coach to say, hey, look, I can do this, but then you pass it into the passing lane, and the guy picks it off, and he's gone on an easy dunk. But it's a process, man. You just said it. Youth will make mistakes, and that's something that Will's trying to live with. He doesn't have as much patience as he once did because his team is blending together. And, Ace is making some strides. Keontae's 3 years in this league, and you know what you have in market. And you hope that Collier, Filipowski, and Sensabaugh, some pieces there, start to understand, too, that they're in this league. And if you want to stay, you got to be consistent and you got to play defense.
All right, last thing, I'll set you loose on this because you just referenced Ace. And, the subplot of this entire season has to be youth and what it looks like and whether or not they're progressing. We've got 4 starts for him. It was too bad the other night, he started things off with that monster dunk, and you're like, all right, looking good. And then, unfortunately,
here we go.
Again, as part of the youth process you get in foul trouble, and he fouled out pretty quick, 10 minutes played. But from a macro standpoint, 4 starts, you travel with a team. How's the progress going with Ace Bailey?
I think it's on pretty much what you would expect. Will took him finally off the bench into a starter role. The last 4 starts, my numbers tell me that, he's knocking 43% of his threes down. But also, Spence, you said it, I like his inside strength that he's shown us a couple of times. I thought, wow, this is going to be a nice game. This is going to be a nice game for him starting out at the rim. And then he fouls out. Just, boom, boom, boom. They just came, one after another, and there was no sync. And he knew he was going to set the bench for the remainder of the first half. And they got, 19 seconds into the third quarter, you pick up 5 and you're done. I mean, that's your night. But, in the starts, I think besides the Chicago game, he's showing, athleticism, which all of us knew he had, but everyone wanted to see it immediately. But, you go back, we talked a couple of weeks ago. Remember, he was flat on his back, for 5 or 6 days just prior to the start of the season with the flu. And you wondered, okay, got to get your legs back, got to get your wind back. And I think he's there. And I think, again, the Chicago game was one of those learning moments for a young rookie to say, okay, I can't, leave my feet. I can't just grab. I just can't put a hand in a passing lane and think I'm going to get away with it. And obviously officials, probably know he's a rookie too. So it played against him. But maybe it's one of those learning moments. And I'm excited to see him on the road tonight against the Lakers, who they got 2 top, there's 3 top 10 scorers that we're going to see tonight. Markkanen, Luka, and Austin Reeves, who's playing out of his mind. And if LeBron go, those are the 2 players the Jazz are going to have to focus on. And I'm anxious to see how Ace, plays his first game in front of that Laker crowd, which can be pretty intense.
Yes, sir. All right, Bowler, appreciate the time. Safe travels. Enjoy L.A., and we'll chat soon.
All right, Spence. Thanks, pal. Talk soon.
Great, Craig Bowler-Jack. Utah Jazz in action tonight against the L.A. Lakers. LeBron James has not played this year, but he has been upgraded to questionable, sciatica. The Jazz have some injuries they're dealing with right now as well. Kyle Filipowski and Taylor Hendricks, in addition to Kyle Anderson, all questionable for that game tonight. All right, we got 2 hours in the books. We've got 2 hours to go. the triumphant return of our guy, Band McMahon, coming up on the other side. It's been a long time since Timmy stopped by, but before we catch a break, we have a new client on the show and on the station, and I am thrilled because they are people that I work with and have worked with for a long time. So it's Game Day Men's Health. Here's the deal. As you age, breaking news, it's harder to get in shape, and it's even harder to stay in shape. It takes a lot of consistency, takes a lot of work, takes a lot of cleaning up habits and curbing vices and such. So a couple of years ago, I just made a goal. I'm like, I'm going to get into the best shape that I've ever been in my life as an adult. It's easy when you're younger. It doesn't take that long and a couple months effort and you're good. Well, after about 3 months of working out almost every day, eating clean, cleaning up some habits, I was very frustrated about my lack of progress. So I had a friend ask me if I had ever supplemented testosterone before, and I said I had not, and he recommended it, recommended Game Day Men's Health. So I went in for a consultation, and this is what they're willing to do for you as a result of them being a client on the show. The consultation is free. What does that look like? You go in, a little bit of blood work, doesn't take long at all, doesn't hurt. You're in there just for a few minutes. Blood work comes back. They go over your levels. They say, okay, you are a little bit low here, or, let's look at maybe some options for this area of your blood work. Let's get you back to where you need to be. And they were able to help me with some testosterone, supplemented some testosterone, also utilized their peptide therapy. Now, they offer semaglutide and tirzepatide, so the weight loss products that everybody is taking when you show up at Thanksgiving and your aunt's like 75 pounds thinner, that's what she's doing. It's effective, no judgment, it works. If you need to lose a lot of weight, they can help you do that too. But if you're just kind of like right outside the realm of getting back into shape, what they're able to do expedites the process in an insane way. So within about another 3 months, after utilizing the products and services of Game Day Men's Health, I'd actually achieved my goal in the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. Okay. So number one, the consultation is free. That's what you need to know right out of the bat, right out of the gates. But number two, what makes this deal incredible is they're giving you 50% off your first year membership. It's the same deal I get. Okay. Because a lot of these products once upon a time were saved for celebrities, rich people, elite athletes. The free consultation and 50% off first-year membership is a no-brainer because you'll get back into shape, your libido will improve, and I can promise you it works. I tried it, and I'd recommend you do the same. So go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com. It's GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Make sure you tell them you heard me talking about it on the show, and you will get the free consultation and then 50% off your first-year membership. It's our good friends at Game Day Men's Health at GameDayMen'sHealth.com. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Tim McMahon stops by. Coming up next on ESPN 700. We did it. We made it through the NBA offseason. We suffered for months and months and months without the best edition of the show. It must mean it's basketball season because Band McMahon, the owner of a brand new contract extension at ESPN, stops by on a Tuesday afternoon. Hello, Tim. How are you, sir?
Howdy, partner. I'm not sure if you know this, but we're like 20% of the way into the NBA season. I was wondering if you guys still love me.
No, we just wanted to wait until the interest was kind of moving over from football, and now I feel like we're kind of getting there, Tim. How you been, man? How are things?
Oh, it's been a pretty chaotic start to the season here. Just hanging out in Dallas where, there's been some, not a lot of wins, but a lot of interest, I would say, so far this season. And, that's good for business and not so good for the franchise at this point.
Certainly. And since we're there, I know you've been asked about this a million times. And because I listen to you and read your work, I know you've talked it about a million times. But for our listenership here in Salt Lake City, was it just a matter of time after the Luka Doncic deal? I mean, you're the guy for this, Tim. Unpack this. Like, how did kind of all this go down, and how'd you digest it from your lens?
I mean, certainly, unless they had extraordinary success, it was going to be just a matter of time. It was a heartbreaking and outraged fan base. It was an illogical trade that they explained very poorly. I don't know if there was a good explanation, but the explanations given made bad worse. It seemed like one PR crisis after another. And then you couple all that with a miserable start where you're one of the worst teams in the league. You have one of the worst offenses in the league while Luka Doncic is leading the league in scoring. And it was all weighing on the players. Like, there was a home court disadvantage. The focus for the fan base was wanting Nico Harrison fired and all that anger and all that angst. And it was just, there was no reason that would justify Nico Harrison continuing as the general manager of the Mavericks. So it got to a point where it was a move that had to be made.
When it comes to, his entire tenure, what's now, look, the bottom line is when you make that trade, and we talked about it at the time, and in a media ecosystem where plenty of people are willing to zig when everyone else is zagging, it's like the one thing that I felt like has been a consensus, like, you've got to be kidding me. And everybody knew it at the time. To your point, it didn't age well. So that is going to be the period at the end of any sentence when it comes to describing his tenure there. But if you looked at it just from an overall standpoint, what's fair to say about the job he did start to finish?
Listen, man, when you make that trade, that's all that matters.
Yep.
When you make that trade, every bit of good you've done is never going to be remembered. Nico Harrison will never get another job in the NBA because of that trade. And his legacy is always going to be, this is the guy who traded Luka Doncic. Are you kidding me? As he was entering his prime, fresh off a finals appearance. So, I mean, I can sit here and tell you, hey, the Kyrie Irving trade has worked out great for the Mavericks. There have been some other moves. They went to the Western Conference Finals in his first year. They went to the finals. None of that is going to be remembered about Nico Harrison. It's the legacy is going to be, this is the guy who stabbed Luka in the back and broke the hearts of the fan base.
Tell me, because I've never met the man, but every time I hear him interviewed, or he just doesn't really seem like a pleasant person anyway, and kind of awkward to be around. What sort of dynamic has that been for you as somebody who's met him a bunch of times and has talked to him? Just like, what kind of dude is he?
Interestingly, the whole reason that Mark Cuban hired him in the first place is because he's a relationships guy. I mean, he was a corporate schmoozer, a guy who climbed the ranks at Nike to run their North American basketball operations. A guy who has great relationships with a bunch of players, a bunch of agents. This is a guy, after so many years of finishing as runners-up in free agency, he could get the Mavericks over the finish line with some of these guys. That was the whole point of hiring him. And so, I expected a guy who really came across as charismatic and kind of smooth and, a schmoozer. And that's not his personality. He's a very private person. Public speaking is certainly not his strength. And his critics that worked with him and worked for him would accuse him of being ego-driven, and so that wasn't what he was billed to be, but that is the way that things played out.
So that leads us to what's next down there. And as you know, I'm biased because we had Dennis Lindsay here for nearly a decade or about a decade or so as the primary roster constructor. And Dennis was always good to me. I did a weekly show with him once upon a time. I think he's very good at what he does. He and Trajan Langdon have built up a nice team in Detroit, who's first in the East right now. And I don't know what's going to be next. It feels like a teardown might be inevitable. Of course, they've got this cornerstone in Cooper Flagg and some nice pieces. So what's next? Is it Dennis? And what does he do if he gets the job?
Okay, well, Dennis is a candidate. He will not be the only candidate. He is Mark Cuban's choice. It is not Mark Cuban's decision. Mark Cuban is now a voice in Dumont's cabinet. Patrick Dumont, the Mavericks governor, the guy whose family bought the team from Cuban. Cuban's gone from having no voice to being back in the room, back at the table, but he's a consultant, not a decision maker. If it was his decision, they'd go hire Dennis Lindsay. And I think that, honestly, you could do a lot worse than that plan. I'm not saying it won't happen. I think it's a possibility. There's going to be a prolonged search, and we'll see where that plays out. For the time being, it's GM by committee, co-GMs, Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi, promoted from assistant GMs. Jason Kidd is going to have a lot of juice. I would say more juice than anybody but the ultimate shot caller, which is Patrick Dumont, who is an NBA novice and now knows just how much he doesn't know.
Is there anything about how the Nico thing unfolded that makes people view Mark Cuban a little bit differently down in that direction?
Not really.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, Cuban's lobbying helped get Nico fired, but it's not like it was some kind of revolutionary idea, you know. And look, if anything, like, would this have happened if Mark Cuban was still the shot caller? No, absolutely not. But Cuban didn't have to sell the team. He cashed in. So I don't think Cuban is some heroic figure in the eyes of Mavericks fans right now because this, you know, he allowed this to happen, I think, is kind of the prevailing thought. Now, he does want what's best for the Mavericks. You know, I think he feels that what's best for the Mavericks is for him to be in a shot calling position. I think that is a distinct minority opinion among people in the organization.
Really, what I was implying is because Mark hired Nico and Nico traded Luka. Is there any egg on Mark's face?
I mean, there is. He brought Nico in. He sold the team to the Addison and Dumont families. So yes, there is egg on his face in that regard. Now, would he have allowed this to happen if he was still in power? No, but the people who did this were in their positions because Mark Cuban made it so.
Yeah. Yeah, what sort of because the Dumont angle, I don't know this person at all. Obviously, as the owner, he gave the green light for the deal. What sort of refiner's fire has this been for him, and what sort of takeaways do you think the Mavs ownership group has after this unbelievable year cycle that has had so much drama?
I don't know what one of those terms means. Refiner's fire?
Just like lessons learned, I guess, is an easier way to say it.
Oh, okay. I mean, you got that fancy Utah education, I guess. Yeah. I think the biggest lesson learned is you don't know what you don't know, and there's a whole lot that you don't know. And his biggest mistake, and it's funny because what do you say about a new owner? Hire good basketball people and trust them and let them do their job. Well, he didn't hire Nico Harrison, but he became quickly convinced that Nico Harrison was a good basketball person, was a good basketball executive. And listen, in Patrick Dumont's defense, they did go to the finals in his first season as the governor. You know, he buys the team, but the deal goes through midseason. Nico makes a couple of trades, and voila, they go from playing position to the NBA Finals. Like, I get it. Now, when the guy comes to you midway through the next season and says, hey, you know what? Here's the plan. We're going to trade Luka Doncic. See, in Dumont's mind, he comes from that corporate world. Who are the stars of the corporate world? the guys in the corner offices, the guys in the boardroom, the bosses. So in Patrick Dumont's mind, he's like, oh, man, Nico, everything he touches turns to gold. This guy's a basketball savant.
Yeah.
His infamous quote is, in Nico we trust. And he's thinking, Nico just led us to the finals. He knows what he's doing. Anybody who knows anything about the NBA realizes, okay, some nice moves to fill out the supporting cast, but who led the Mavericks to the finals? Luka Doncic.
Yeah. Carried him on his back.
The guy who at the time was 25 years old and had been a 5-time first-team All-NBA selection, and he was just entering his prime. And so I think Dumont, his eyes have been open to just how much of an NBA education he is still in need of. And he's going to get some of that. He's going to lean on, Mark Cuban being one person, Jason Kidd, the co-GMs. I would advise him as he's going through this, this search for Nico Harrison's permanent replacement, as you're talking to people like Dennis Lindsay and, if it's Amani McNair, Calvin Booth, Masai Ujiri, if you can get Bob Myers to sit down, so on and so on. As you're talking to them, you're interviewing them, yes, to see if they're people you want to hire. You're also interviewing them to learn about the league, to learn, hey, how would you go about building this roster? I mean, this is a prime opportunity for you to get that kind of education because, he's a guy who just, he's an NBA novice. That's the simple fact of the matter. And he wants to hire good people. He doesn't want to meddle in day-to-day operations. Now he's involved in saying AD can't come back to play until there's clear medical data, saying he doesn't want to be involved in the day-to-day stuff. It got to a point where he felt like he had to be. So, he's trying to hire somebody good and get out of the way again. But even in that role, you need a solid NBA education and a network to be able to function as a governor.
I don't know that there's a media member that's more familiar with Luka than you are, and I've heard the sound bites of when he's been asked about this, but I just wonder, behind closed doors, what Luka's thoughts are. And look, he's in L.A., he's killing it, max money guy, he's just fine. But one of the undercurrents of the entire thing was how sad Luka was and how badly he loved Dallas, which is another, because we talk about this here, like, the Jazz traded Donovan in his prime. Mm-hmm. Donovan might be one of the top 10 players in the league right now, but it's a false parallel because we knew that Donovan wanted to live somewhere else. Luka wanted Dallas, which makes it even crazier. I wonder what you would say about what you feel, what you believe Luka actually thinks about the whole thing.
Well, there was actually a Dallas TV reporter who went up to Oklahoma City when the Lakers played the Thunder the day after Nico was fired and asked Luka about these. That was awkward timing because the Lakers just got completely dominated by the Thunder. But, Luka kind of gave perfunctory answers, and he didn't want to, dance on the grave of Nico. But I'm sure there's he's got to feel a little bit of, you earned that one with Nico. But I truly believe when Luka says, hey, I'm with the Lakers now. Last year, the second half of the season, even going in the summer, it was like a time of mourning for him because, not only did it, he really did want to be in Dallas his whole career, but also just the way things went down, he felt like he got shanked. He felt like, he just got completely backstabbed. And, there's a lot of emotions involved. But I think he's in a very good place mentally. Clearly, physically, he got himself into a much better condition than he's been maybe his entire career, certainly in years. And it doesn't do Luka Doncic any good to dwell on what could have been or to enjoy the misery that the Mavericks are enduring. He's trying to win with the Lakers. He's trying to fulfill his potential with the opportunity that he has now. So I believe him when he basically says, hey, I'm with the Lakers now, and that's where my focus is. That's where his energy should be. And I believe him when he says that's where it is.
Yeah, and again, he's been brilliant because, that's who he's always been since he became a pro basketball player, even when he was a teenager. So he'll be just fine. But the Jazz are actually in Los Angeles tonight to play the Lakers. Let's do a little Jazz, Timmy, before I set you loose. And it's been a minute since you've joined us. So kind of an interesting early season dynamic where Walker Kessler, early on media availability, is asked about the fact that he and the Jazz did not come to an agreement with a contract extension as he is entering the final year of his rookie deal, Walker was very honest. He said, "This is frustrating. I'm frustrated. I'm not going to talk about it all year, but I was hoping to get something done. We didn't. I'm very frustrated about it." And then, unfortunately, after a really dynamic start to the season, he gets hurt and he's out for the year. So, number one, you feel horrible for the kid. Number one, you feel awful for Walker. Get him back, get him healthy. And a shoulder injury for a big is nothing to sneeze at. He's young. I'm sure he's going to be fine. But number two, you also feel horrible because he may have lost a lot of money. Now, it only takes one team to believe in you, but he doesn't have the opportunity to prove that he can go out and get the max deal that he wants. And then, of course, the Jazz have the opportunity to match any offer. The irony is it actually could work out in the Jazz favor because they get Walker back, maybe at a discounted rate, and they lose enough games to stay in the bottom 8, so they maintain the draft asset that, as you know, could go to OKC. But what are your thoughts on this Walker-Kessler story here in Salt Lake?
I don't sense that there's a lot of alignment between Walker Kessler's camp and the Utah Jazz at this point.
Okay.
Look, he's going to be a restricted free agent. Obviously, that gives the Jazz a lot of leverage in any discussions. I don't know how that's all going to play out this summer. You know that I am high on Walker Kessler and his potential long term. If I'm working for another team, I've got my eye on this as a potential situation of the restricted free agent who you might actually be able to get. And look, that doesn't, and if I'm in the Utah Jazz's position, should I, if I do feel like, okay, hey, perhaps a parting of the ways might be in everybody's best interest, I would have that, with the stipulation of if we can get value in a sign and trade. So I'm just going to choose my words carefully and call that a murky situation. I do believe that Walker Kessler is going to have a long, productive NBA career. We'll find out soon enough whether that's going to continue in Utah after this summer.
Very fascinating, Tim. We have missed these insights, certainly, as you're the guy that's plugged in a way that most are not. So that moves us over to Lowry, who has been awesome because he is awesome. We just may have forgotten because they didn't let him play last year. And, the Zach Lowe's of the world, the Chris Mannixes of the world, the NBA podcast, Bill Simmons ecosystem of the world, Ryan Russillo, all talk about him being very available where the Jazz simply do not. And it's not like the Jazz are going to come out publicly and say we're shopping him. I've always been of the mindset if you're going to trade him, you should have done it during the All-Star year. There's a world where the time frame simply doesn't match up, and there's a world where he's awesome and we want good players on the Jazz. So how do you think it plays out?
Well, I would say that I felt like going in this season that Lowry had to really play well to reestablish his value in the trade market. Certainly he has done that. And then some. The guy's averaging 30-plus efficiently right now, as a 7-footer who can score in a lot of different ways and doesn't need to dominate the ball in doing so. I don't get the sense that the Jazz are determined to trade him. That doesn't mean that there's not something that will present itself. But this is where we get into semantics. Shopping, willing to listen, those are two very different things. If the Jazz's phone rings, I absolutely am certain that they're going to pick it up. They're going to listen. But if they trade Lowry, I still think it's going to be for a steep price. And look, that was the case before he signed that extension. Remember, there was a lot of smoke about Jazz and Warriors, and they had a lot of discussions. None that came anywhere remotely close to getting a deal done, because the Jazz essentially were asking for, any non-future Hall of Famer on that roster plus all the picks and swaps, Yeah. So I know this. I know Ryan Smith really enjoys having Lowry Markkanen in Utah. I know that Lowry likes being in Utah. And what's his? How old is he now? He's
29,
27,
29. I think he's turning 29 this
Okay.
year, I believe.
Okay, so they still feel, and I think it's reasonable that Larry Markkinen can be one of the major pieces on the next good Jazz team.
Turns 29 in May.
Okay, so he's still. I'd say he's approaching the meat of his prime.
Yeah, fair. All right, last thing I'll set you loose on this, Tim. You know, the hope right now is contingent upon some of the young players or one of the young players showing the potential of being the guy. And it's very early for Ace Bailey. We've seen 4 starts. There are moments and snapshots where you go, okay, we haven't had this since Donovan. Okay. Now, there's a lot ahead of him, and he is a kid, but he's a great kid. He's fun to listen to. Everyone seems to like him, and that's great, all the feel-good stuff. But when it is fully baked, if it goes the way that it might, what could it look like, and why should Jazz fans have hope in that direction?
Well, Ace Bailey absolutely is going to listen to adults in his life, for better now, for worse, pre-draft, right? He's an extremely coachable kid. He is an extraordinarily gifted and talented basketball player. That kind of length, that kind of athleticism, the developing skill, his potential is to be a star in the league. There's a long way, there's a long path for him to travel from where he is now to being a perennial all-star, but that's the kind of potential that they have, or that he has. And I can just tell you the Jazz feel very, very fortunate that they were able to get him with the 5th overall pick. Obviously he's now ready to be an impact player on a night-in, night-out basis. There's not a very long list of one-and-done guys who are, but they are very optimistic about his future from a talent perspective and from a coachability and work ethic perspective.
Well, Tim, it's been too long, my friend. Great stuff as always. Congrats on your extension. Glad you're going to be around for a while. Keep up the elite work, okay? Be good. We'll chat soon.
Well, hope to talk to you next week. Adios, amigos.
There we go. Great Tim McMahon. We might bring that soundbite back about what Tim said about Walker Kessler. That is some new information that I have not heard. I'm quite sure most Jazz fans have not heard that as well. We might replay that maybe before we get out of here, right before 6 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. We're going to bring Dave Fox live in studio coming up. But before we catch a break, Porter, have you changed your stance on money? Do you currently like money now? Just for the bit, say yes, dude.
For the bit, I gotta be a contrarian here, no?
Yeah, just say you like money. That's all.
I love money.
Okay, Porter loves money. Are you driving in your car right now? Raise your hand if you like money. If you didn't raise your hand, you're lying. Is your money working for you? That's the question, right? And I'm sure a lot of us, when we were younger, we didn't understand what compound interest was. Have your money make money. Does that make sense when you're young? Probably not. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you are banking with a big national bank, let's start there. It's a for-profit endeavor for them to make money off of you. They're profiting off of the fact that you're in business with them, right? Even some of the local banks that aren't necessarily the big guys, it's the same model. Credit unions are different. They're not for profit. They exist to help you make your money do more, right? So that's number one with America First Credit Union. Let's get your money working for you. Number two is simply this, and I can tell you personal experience. I was with one of the big dogs for a number of years, had a very frustrating, quite frankly, bank error go against me. I had all the documentation I needed, could not get anyone on the phone, walked into a branch that could not have been less helpful. America First Credit Union is local. They have 87 branches where you can walk in. You can get to know your banker. You can get to know the people at the branch. And when you call the number, they actually answer. So that's also good. So get your money working for you. Move it over into a business that isn't profiting off your back and is there to help you learn things about investing, learn things about retirement, help your children understand how money works. They have a new member offer right now where they're giving you $100 if you just open up a checkings and a savings account, $100 on the house. But if you open up a bank account for your teenager, $50 for them, up to age 18, right? So teach your children how money works with America First Credit Union. They're also the official credit union of the University of Utah, of Real Salt Lake, of the Utah Jazz. You get early entrance to all the venues: Rice Eccles Stadium, America First Field, the Delta Center, and it is the Delta Center. You get great discounts on concessions, on Team Store as well. They've got great designed Visa debit cards. You can get a Ute one, get an RSL one. They just released our new Jazz one as well. So it's a no-brainer, and the new member offer makes it even more of a no-brainer to make the switch over to America First Credit Union today. Go to americafirst.com or go to americafirst.com/deals for the new members offer, or you can just walk into any of their 87 branches here locally. It's our good friends at America First Credit Union. Appreciate them being a part of this radio program. We'll catch a break. Going to bring in Dave Fox live in studio coming up on the other side of a Tuesday Drive right here on ESPN 700.
iTunes.
You still use iTunes,
Yeah,
huh?
I still do.
No Spotify?
No, because what happens on Spotify, I have a harder time creating my own playlist. It's like all the same group kind of thing, and I'm not that good at that. And on iTunes, I can create all my own. I love it.
You can very much do that on Spotify.
I know. I just haven't figured it out.
Hey, whatever.
How are you?
Whatever works for you, Dave.
Yeah,
We're
that's
all
great.
about taking care of Dave Fox.
Okay, and by the way, did the Cowboys take care of Dave Fox or what?
Oh,
how about them Cowboys?
You want to brag about a win over the Raiders, dude?
It was on the road.
At least your starting quarterback isn't Tyrod Taylor. Go Jets.
Gosh, I saw that. I was
Lose them all. Lose them all, man. Lose every game the rest of the way.
I can't believe he's still in the league.
They can't even tank right. Like they won a couple of weeks ago. Just lose them all. Get the Mendoza kid. Let's reset and start over. But
that's funny because Timmy wants the Mendoza kid in
for the Raiders. Yeah. Well, whoever gets the number one pick, I think it's him. Yeah. It was interesting to see Schottenheimer hold out CD and Pickens the first.
Really weird.
But I mean, do we give them credit? Because once they played, like they were dominant last night.
Well, I'll tell you got to give credit is to Pickens and CD for not falling into that
pouting.
question.
Yeah.
Now CD, they kept, the media, they're down there, they're pressuring him. Hey, what was that all about? Pickens just gave this really nice answer about how great everyone played. CD, same thing, and then when they try to follow up, he says, "I'm not going there." That's I am not going there. Now we've since learned, I guess they were late for a meeting or something.
Correct.
Like that.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's a little arm flexing on the part of a coaching staff that hasn't really been able to do that for years or even tried to.
Does it bum you out that the defense is so pathetic? And if you sign Micah Parsons, because they bring in Quinnen Williams. When the offense ticks, it's a good football team, but the defense has been tragic. Like, they're a Micah Parsons signing away
Williams
from
helps.
maybe. He does help, but he doesn't really get to the quarterback, although he did last night. Yeah. Does it?
He helps plug up the run, though, and that's the important part.
Porter, resident Cowboys fan, is it fair to say that the Cowboys are a Micah Parsons away from maybe being a playoff team this year?
Yeah. It's seemingly enough they could really use like a game breaker.
First of all, they are going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah. They might.
Did you hear Stephen A. Smith say that? Did you hear that about 2 weeks ago?
We live in a Stephen A. Smith free zone.
It's hilarious. But he hates the Cowboys. And yet he said
he doesn't know what he likes. He doesn't know what he likes and doesn't like. It's just whatever.
They're going to make the playoffs.
Okay, well, Porter, if Stephen A. Smith said it, mark it down, all right?
I think they
back up my point.
probably play a postseason game, but
maybe.
Well, that would be the playoffs.
They might.
I'm not very confident how it goes.
They might. I mean, look, there's a little bit of hope. I just hope for only bad things for Jerry Jones is the deal.
I mean, even as a fan, sometimes you do that.
All right, David, tonight, 6:30 Mountain Time. So when we say goodnight at 6, this will be interesting. The Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show starts at 6. Utah basketball will be after that. Porter is producing.
Big game, by the way. Huge game.
Huge game. We'll get there in a moment. Porter is producing. He has promised to at least give updates on air, but we may not be on air when the college football playoff rankings are released tonight. Mm-hmm. It feels like the most likely scenario is BYU and Utah both move up one spot, right? That's, I think, what we're expecting tonight.
It would have been nice if Notre Dame could have, if Pittsburgh could even put up a fight. It didn't help having Oklahoma win. Little things like that, and that's going to continue for the next 3 weeks, watching all those teams that are just ahead of them. But all you can do, I don't mean to fall into coach speak, but all you can do is just go out and take care of your own business, because the Utes have absolutely the old control your own destiny. They don't.
No, they don't.
They don't at all.
No,
they just literally have to. BYU does, on the other hand. So there's really not much you can even say about it other than let's just go out and do your thing. They do have a ton of blowout wins, which is nice, and apparently the committee is into routes, which is really good for college football. But anyway. We'll see where it goes.
Here's the issue, though, right? So I want to know where you fall on this issue. Since the BYU loss, Utah's averaging 51 points per game. And they are – it doesn't even look like a fair fight. Baylor made it interesting for a moment. One of the weird things about this Utah football team, and we've heard Witt talk about this himself, they don't tackle all that well. A lot of missed tackles every single game. They're 7th in the conference in rush defense, which is a weird thing to wrap your mind around. Now, they're the best team in the conference in rush offense. They're the second best rushing attack in all of college football. How good do you think they are? Because the issue is that I know there are a lot of people that because of the current form, and the committee tells us they want to know who you are today, They don't care who you were 2 months ago. See Notre Dame, who went 0-2 to start the year, two good, losses to two good teams. But the potential of Utah still cracking this bracket is there only because of the current form. So how good do you think they are? I mean, as far as them routing bad teams, we have data there. But if there was a rematch against a Texas Tech, if there's a rematch against BYU, with the current form, do you think Utah is really one of the elite teams?
Well, I think when you get into momentum, it's a big thing in any sport. And when they played Texas Tech the first time, there really wasn't – I mean, they were undefeated, but there wasn't any great momentum behind that. Where they have wins over Wyoming and
Cal Poly, UCLA.
UCLA, a terrible football team. So there really wasn't anything. And by the way, that Wyoming game was kind of odd, especially early on. So you remember that. But now, suddenly, there's this total momentum swing. And I really believe there's a big part of that in sports, and especially in football. So maybe – but I also do not – I'm not one of these guys who says, oh, if they played again today, the Utes would definitely win. Because, no, that's not the case.
It's hard to know.
But their momentum – and the reason is when you play those games earlier, we talked about this. I swear you and I talked about this before the season began. Losses in the first 4 weeks are way better than losses in the last 4 weeks. And we all know that, and the Utes are proving it now. But bottom line is they still need a little bit of help. They need some friends on the committee. Hey, isn't Mark Harlan on the committee?
Mark is on the committee. It adds such a fun little layer that the deviant sports talk radio host side of me just loves.
I do too.
Because if somehow, some way, and the only way is this, in my opinion, BYU wins out, which I think they will. Yeah. Utah wins out, but they finished their final two games the way that they've played over the past 3 weeks. They beat K-State and Kansas by 1 million. Yeah. And it's not close. And it's not close. BYU beats Cincinnati UCF. BYU goes to the Big 12 championship game, and Tech smokes them. Yeah. There's a small chance Tech is in as your auto qualifier, and Utah sneaks in the back door as your at-large. Small chance.
And I agree with you 100%. And this is where not being in the Big 12 championship game actually helps you in the case of Utah. Because that same could be, let's say it was reversed, and it's Utah going to the Big 12 championship, slightly ranked ahead of BYU, and then they get smoked by Texas Tech. BYU, any BYU fan would probably tell you, oh, yeah, they're going to hop right over that.
Can you imagine?
But, you're going to have a busy day the day that's announced.
Can you? So if you put your BYU fan hat on, okay, and that dynamic goes down, you say to yourself, wait, number one, we beat Utah head-to-head. Number two, we went to the Big 12 championship game, and they still get in over us, and we both have 2 losses. The screams, the screeches, people, the streets of Provo would be littered with chocolate milk. We wouldn't know what to do with it.
And guess what? To the committee, none of that matters.
I know.
I'm not sure what matters to the committee. I think the committee loves just screwing with people. Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? Just messing with stuff. And, seeing where it goes. And when they finally get down to that last vote and everything's done and over with, then they'll get serious and, they'll pick their 12 favorite teams. And I don't think it matters who beat who, especially if it's earlier in the season. And that's why this is going to be so compelling to see which direction they go. Because, wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall in those meetings? I mean, it's just no one ever will. It'd be great if one day they televise them.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go live to the committee now.
Man. That would be the ultimate reality TV show. Dude, Harlan would have to shut down his socials if Utah got in over BYU. Oh, yeah. But look at this, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely.
So look, just for the listeners' sake, this is the ESPN playoff predictor. This is not Spence Checketts. This is not Dave Fox. This is an exercise that you can do right now yourself if you go to ESPN.com and go over to the college football page. What they do here is you can choose. There are 19 teams left that actually have a shot.
Right.
And as I continue to say, if you're one of the 19 fan bases in America that a week before Thanksgiving, you still have something to hope for, you are very blessed. This time of year, be grateful. So we're going to do the exercise with Utah and BYU, okay? Utah, according to the model, has a 39% chance of qualifying for the CFP. Here's what you do. You click on the Utes. Then they give you the option of picking the final 2 games. Utah beats K-State. There you go. Utah beats Kansas. Then they go to the final portion of the exercise, and the question is, will Utah win its conference championship game? The options are yes, no, and won't make the game.
Okay.
I don't believe they're going to make the game. So I click on don't make the game, and then they give you the calculated probability to make the CFP. It is exactly 50%.
Wow.
If that goes down, okay?
Now, what if you do the exercise with BYU?
That's what I'm about to do, Dave. You're one smart cookie, young man. All right, so we go back up, and we'll do the exercise with BYU. As of right now, BYU has a 37% chance.
Almost the same. Wow.
Almost. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you what I perceive to be the most likely scenario. I think BYU beats Cincinnati this weekend.
I don't know if they smoke them, but I think they beat them.
I think they beat them. And honestly, it doesn't matter if they smoke them. They just need to get in. And then they're going to smoke UCF. So we give BYU their final 2 wins. Then the question is, will BYU win its conference championship game? I believe the answer to that is no.
Correct.
Which brings us down to the potential possibility of making the playoff. BYU's at 30%. So what the simulation tells you is that BYU could win its final 2 games, go to the Big 12 championship, and Utah is more likely to be in if they win their final 2.
This has been on the table over 3 or 4 weeks, though, Spence. You know that.
Yeah, it has.
And it's not breaking news. I just think a lot of people believe that, and that's kind of the misfortune of having that championship game where it is, because one of those teams is going to be heading into the playoff season with a loss, and that doesn't bode well unless you're ranked, in the top 5. Then it really doesn't matter. So yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this ever since after that BYU-Utah game, and Utah started smoking people.
Yep. And I want to be very clear. If I was Brian Santiago, if I was Kalani, and this actually unfolds, I think I'd be pretty pissed off.
Well, and the question is, how vocally pissed off are you going to be? We see it in the NCAA basketball tournament all the time. How many times is the 69th and 70th and 71st teams coach gets up there in front of the mic and states his case, we should have been in this, and we'll see where that goes. I cannot wait for that last day before the announcement.
If this scenario unfolds, I think the kinder, gentle Kalani Sitake is going to melt away, and I think he's going to express some...
You think so?
Well, and I wouldn't blame him. If I was the head coach of BYU, and we beat Utah, and we went to the conference championship game, and Utah gets in, and we both have 2 losses, I would be pissed. I would be irate, even though Kalani's the sweetest guy. I mean, I think we're going to see that melt away.
I'm 100%, and I understand that argument. But still, I just think the committee has blinders on, and they don't look at a couple of things that you just mentioned. They don't look at the fact that you were even in the Big 12 championship. All they look at is you just lost a game. Oh, and you lost to this team twice. We don't need to see that again. And that's where Utah kind of benefits from all this.
What they're telling us, and I'll repeat this at the risk of being redundant, is they want to know who you are right now.
Yeah,
and
I love that. NCAA is the same way, by the way.
And by the time the final,
by
the time the final iteration of but by the time selection day comes, it will be 6 or 7 weeks since Utah lost to BYU. So they're going to look at, okay, that's the loss. But they're also telling us they like BYU, so that's not a bad loss. But that was 6 or 7 weeks ago. And it will come 10 days in this hypothetical after BYU got smoked again by Tech.
Yeah.
They're going to look at that. And again, I'm not saying it's fair. This is a weird sport because of all the arbitrary natures of the way that we rank these teams. Ute fans know this. They had 2 years where their football team won every game on their schedule, but they couldn't play for a championship. It's just a really weird thing.
Well, and it actually, you said 10 days. This will happen pretty quick after the championship game weekend.
They want to know who you are that day.
Right. They want it. Exactly. And they let, whether it's basketball, heck, I've even seen it in baseball. I believe it or not, followed this a few years ago.
Let's dig into NCAA baseball real quick.
They love teams who have momentum going.
Yes, they do.
I remember a Cincinnati team, a great team back in the mid-late 90s who didn't get into the NCAA tournament because their key player, now I forgot his name, but he got injured.
Kenyon Martin.
Yep. And they were a great team. You know that. I mean, they were phenomenal. And they didn't put them in because they knew they weren't going to be phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
They look at that kind of stuff.
I know they do. Man, the end of this season is going to be wild. All right, Dave, before I set you loose, for the second time in 3 nights, I will be
You okay?
grinding tape. So what comes our way tonight on KMYU?
You need a massage or anything? You probably do after Sunday night. You were there with the
If I'm
goat.
able to contract that out, I don't want one from you, but can I hire a masseuse and then
Yeah, just expense it.
Nice. Okay.
Porter,
Porter, save that sound.
Look,
I have that. I
Porter's
have that
got
on
a big
tape.
smile on his face.
Well,
He
we have
wants-
that on tape. You're
I'm
incriminated.
just picturing Dave now giving you a massage on KUTV.
I want
that won't happen.
I want a 2.5 hour massage. 2 different
That
therapists.
seems pretty long.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyway, talking hockey on Sunday. Thank you for coming in tonight.
For sure.
It's Talking Jazz. Got a lot of things to talk about. I really enjoy having you in on Talking Jazz because you can kind of go down a path that sometimes other hosts can't generally do that. And there are a few things on the table we'll talk about, like future of Lowry. What are the Jazz thinking about with him? How do you balance? Everyone's coming back now. How do you balance all that with rotations, things like that? So Jazz also play the Lakers tonight, but we won't address that in this particular show because it'll probably still be going on. So join us for Talking Jazz tonight, KMYU, right after the news.
Can I have Porter send you some sound to consider playing tonight from the Tim McMahon interview?
Oh, sure. What do you got?
Porter, do me a favor. Clip the Tim McMahon Walker Kessler portion and just text it to Dave. So Tim McMahon joined the show today and essentially said he's hearing there's a big gap between Walker's camp and the Jazz. And there's a good chance that if Walker gets an offer at the end of the year, the Jazz won't match and let him walk. Or maybe they try to facilitate a sign and trade, which is something I hadn't heard until today. So maybe we dig into that. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, we'll have to modify some things, but we'll talk about that.
Modify we shall do.
Yeah.
Dave,
we have a rundown and we could modify it.
Great to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Thanks. I'll see you in a few hours.
Okay, the great Dave Fox, 1035 KMYU. We call it Talking Jazz. Please join us. I want to tell you about my friends at Advanced Window Products. They have their football special going on right now, where you can get $2,500 off when you buy 10 windows or more. It's a local Salt Lake company operated by our guy, Nate Orchard, still the mayor of Sac Lake City, his buddy, Jake Weber. These are the best dudes. We've had them in studio a bunch. I've been out on remote with them a ton. If you're in the market now for new windows, call today. Now, here's the thing. If you anticipate being in the market maybe in a month or so, if you call today, you get on the schedule and you lock in the savings. So don't wait. Here's the number, Advanced Window Products, at 801-850-9100. That's 801-850-9100, 801-850-9100, or you can always get them online at advancedwindows.com. 3 hours down, 1 hour to go. Final hour of the program is next on ESPN 700. All right, wrapping it up. Final segment of the program on a Tuesday afternoon. Some good college basketball on tonight, including the Utes in action. We're going to say goodnight and bring you the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show coming up on the other side of a quick break. Then we're going to send it over to Utah Hoops. It's a busy night for our guy, Bill Riley. We'll see if the undefeated start to the season for Utah continues, taking on Purdue FW tonight. It is at the Huntsman Center, 7 o'clock tip on ESPN+. Utah's 4-0 so far this year. We are about a half hour away from finding out the third iteration of the college football playoff rankings. I am anticipating BYU at 11, Utah at 12, Texas with a bit of a fall. I don't know how much drama there is outside of that. So ESPN on television has a college basketball doubleheader from the world's most famous arena, Madison Square Garden. And in between games 1 and games 2, it's Kansas-Duke. That's your late game. Michigan State-Kentucky will wrap up. Then they're going to bring you the latest iteration of the CFP rankings. So there you go. Interesting stuff from Tim McMahon today about Walker Kessler. The Jazz have always been getting information out of the Jazz is like parachuting into the Kremlin. It's really tough. So it's not like we're going to learn anything from them about where they're at with Walker. You have heard some frustration from Walker Kessler's side of things about the lack of competitive nature as far as the team goes. I'll just say this. If we're running into a player doesn't want to be here situation, he's too good to let walk into free agency. You might need to figure something out.
Yeah, he's a player that clearly is, as you said, too good to let walk, but he's not too good to like have a coming undone over a contract situation. Like he's a player that you can look at options to replace and you can move on from without feeling too bad about it. That being said, he's an awesome rim protector. He seems to like it here. Seems to gel well with the coaching staff. So it would be tough to move on. But like you said, it's a player who you can't just walk on from, let him walk into free agency and get nothing in return. But he is a player that, you maybe are considering being able to move on from, where, a Lauri Markkanen might be tougher to let him go.
Yeah, for sure. Aaron Rodgers will avoid surgery. Looked like he had a hand injury last week in the Steelers game. But Mason Rudolph might stay on the sideline, so a little update there. All right, coming up next, the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. Here, a recap of the Baylor game, a preview of the Kansas State game, and we'll see what sort of reaction we get later on from the college football playoff rankings. Then it's time for a little Utah Hoops. Busy night on the station. Porter, what comes our way on a Wednesday edition of the show?
Halfway through the work week, Andy Larson will stop by the Salt Lake Tribune. Zach Harper will stop by for the NBA Daily Assist. And then it's college football time. Roxy Bernstein. Maybe a little hockey with Roxy as well. I believe he's got the Mammoth game on Thursday. And then speaking of the college football playoff, Ivan Mizell of the committee and, of course, college football writers, lore, fame, whatever you want to call it, will join the program as well.
Ivan's a great guest. That'll be fun. So join us for a Wednesday show. We'll say goodnight, and a special thank you to Chris Comrani, Craig Bolerjack, Tim McMahon, and Dave Fox. For any of the sound you missed from the show today, the website is ESPN700sports.com. Make sure to download our mobile app and take us on the go. That ESPN 700 app is available in the App Store, the Google Play Store. Then for what we do in our space every afternoon for 4 hours, check out our podcast page. It is called The Drive with Spence Checketts. It's available wherever you get your shows. Subscribe, rate, review, say nice things in the comments. Give us all the stars. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show comes your way, coming up right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700.